The iron gate of Yuma Territorial Prison groaned open at dawn, spilling a man into the brutal Arizona heat like a stone cast into still water. Cole Maddox stepped through, boots crunching on alkali dust, squinting against light that felt like judgment. 15 years inside hadn't softened him. It had forged him into something harder than the bedrock beneath the prison walls. He carried no belongings except the clothes on his back, worn canvas trousers, a faded shirt stiff with old sweat, and a leather vest cracked like dried riverbeds. His hat, battered, stained, sat low over eyes the color of winter sky. Those eyes hadn't seen mercy in a decade and a half. They wouldn't recognize it now if it stood before him wearing Sunday clothes. The warden watched from the gatehouse window, jaw tight. He'd kept Cole Maddox locked down in solitary more times than he cared to count. Not for violence, but for silence. The kind of silence that unnerved guards, that made hardened criminals shift away in the yard. Cole Maddox didn't talk, didn't beg, didn't break. He just waited. "You got $73 coming," the gate guard said, counting out bills with tobacco-stained fingers. "Stage runs to Tucson twice weekly. You'd be smart to catch it." Cole took the money, folded it once, tucked it into his vest pocket without a word. Smart had nothing to do with where he was headed. Smart men didn't survive what he'd survived. Smart men didn't carry what he carried. The guard cleared his throat. "Got people waiting for you out there?" Cole's gaze shifted past him, through him, toward the shimmering horizon where heat devils danced between saguaros. "Not the kind you mean." He turned and walked into the desert without looking back. The town of Sentinel Springs hadn't changed much in 15 years, though Cole remembered it through the lens of a 12-year-old boy's eyes. The false front buildings taller then, the saloons louder, the whole world bigger. Now it felt small, temporary, like a stage set waiting for the show to end. He rode in on a dun mare he'd bought with half his prison money from a rancher outside Yuma, the kind of transaction done with few words and mutual understanding. The horse was sturdy, unremarkable, perfect. Cole needed to move like smoke, and smoke didn't ride a flashy paint. Midday sun hammered Main Street. A dog slept in the shade of the general store. Two old men sat outside the barbershop, checker game forgotten between them as they watched Cole pass. Strangers always drew attention in small towns, but Cole felt their stares linger longer than curiosity required. He dismounted outside the Silver Dollar Saloon, tied the mare to the hitching post, and pushed through the batwing doors. The interior smelled like every saloon he'd ever known: whiskey, sweat, sawdust, old tobacco. A bartender polished glasses behind a scarred oak bar. 3 men played cards at a corner table. A woman in a faded green dress sat alone near the window, staring into a half-empty glass like it held answers she'd been seeking for years. Cole walked to the bar. "Whiskey." The bartender poured without meeting his eyes. "Passing through?" "Maybe." "A lot of folks pass through Sentinel Springs. Most don't stay long." "That right?" The bartender set the glass down, scratched at his graying beard. "Town ain't what it used to be. Used to have 3 saloons, 2 banks, a real hotel. Now we got this, and not much else." Cole lifted the glass, studied the amber liquid. "What happened?" "Same thing that happens everywhere. Big men swallow the little ones. Railroad came through 20 miles south, took most of the business with it. Mining dried up. Folks moved on." He paused. "You looking for work?" "Information." The bartender's expression shifted, not quite wary, but close. "What kind?" "The kind about a man named Dutch Keller." Silence dropped over the saloon like a blanket over a birdcage. The card players stopped mid-deal. The woman by the window turned her head slightly, just enough that Cole caught the movement in his peripheral vision. The bartender's hand drifted toward something beneath the bar. "Don't know anybody by that name." Cole's voice didn't rise, didn't harden. It simply stated fact. "You're lying." "Mister, I don't know who you are or what you think you're—" 15 years ago, Dutch Keller ran with a gang that operated out of the Ruby Mountains, him and 4 others. They hit ranches, stagecoaches, small-town banks. Not for money, for sport, for the hell of it. Cole took a slow sip of whiskey, let it burn down his throat. "I'm looking for him, and the others." One of the card players stood abruptly, chair scraping against floorboards. He was young, nervous. hand hovering near his hip. You got business with Dutch. You take it up with him yourself. Cole turned, gave the kid his full attention. 22, maybe 23. Gun tied down low like he'd practiced the draw in front of a mirror, but never pulled iron when it counted. Where do I find him? He don't want to be found. That's not what I asked. The kid's face flushed. You can't just ride into town making accusations. Not accusations. Cole's voice remained level, almost conversational. Fact. Dutch Keller and his men rode into the Maddox Ranch on September 14, 1871. Killed Samuel Maddox, his wife Clara, their 2 daughters Emma and Grace. Killed 3 ranch hands, burned the house to the ground. Took nothing but satisfaction. The woman by the window stood suddenly, knocking her glass over, whiskey spread across the table like spilled blood. Jesus Christ, she whispered. The bartender's face had gone pale. That was you? The Maddox boy? Cole didn't answer. He didn't need to. The kid's hand dropped away from his gun. Dutch Keller's been dead 2 years. Got himself shot in a card game down in Silver City. Something cold and sharp twisted in Cole's chest, but his expression didn't change. Who shot him? Some drifter. Nobody knew his name. Convenient. It's the truth. Where's he buried? The bartender spoke up, voice rough. Cemetery on the east edge of town. Unmarked grave, 4th row back. We don't mark the graves of men like that. Cole drained his whiskey, set the glass down with barely a sound. The others. Where are they? The 3 men exchanged glances. The bartender wiped his hands on his apron, a nervous gesture. Look, Mr. Cole, what happened to your family was evil. No denying that. But those men scattered after what they did. Most are probably dead by now, or so far gone they might as well be. Names. I can't. Cole's hand moved to his vest, and every man in the room tensed. But he didn't draw a weapon. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn soft from years of handling, and spread it on the bar. 5 names written in careful script, the handwriting of a boy who'd learned his letters from a mother who would never teach anything again. Dutch Keller, Silas Beaumont. William Billy Crane, James Dockery, Thomas Wardlow. The bartender stared at the list. You've been carrying this since the night they gave me a reason to remember. Dutch is crossed out. Cole looked at the name. Someone, himself, in Yuma, after hearing rumors, had drawn a single line through it in pencil. Maybe he is dead. Maybe he isn't. Either way, I'll confirm it. Then I'll move to the next name. The woman stepped closer, and Cole got his first good look at her. 40, maybe 45, with the kind of worn beauty that spoke of hard years and harder choices. Her eyes were sharp, calculating. You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe. Those other names, they're not small-time outlaws anymore. Beaumont owns half of Prescott. Crane runs a freight company out of Santa Fe. Dockery's a lawman in Colorado Territory. And Wardlow, she hesitated. Wardlow's a banker in San Francisco, sits on the city council, shakes hands with governors. Cole folded the paper, tucked it back into his vest. Then I'll visit Prescott first. The bartender shook his head. You can't just walk into a man's town and kill him? Cole's voice carried no heat, no anger. It was colder than that. Factual. Watch me. The cemetery sat on a low rise where wind rattled through dried grass and weathered headstones tilted like drunks at closing time. Cole found the unmarked grave exactly where the bartender said, 4th row back, sunken earth and scattered rocks the only indication someone lay beneath. He stood there as afternoon shadows lengthened, studying the ground with the intensity of a man reading a book written in a language only he understood. Dutch Keller. Dead 2 years. Maybe. Cole had learned in Yuma that truth was flexible, that men lied about everything from card hands to identities, that the only certainty in this world was uncertainty itself. He'd also learned patience. 15 years of it, stacked like cordwood. Footsteps behind him, soft but deliberate. Cole didn't turn. You planning to dig him up? The woman from the saloon stopped a few paces away, arms crossed against the evening chill. Because I've got a shovel if you're serious. Don't need to dig, just needed to see. See what? If it feels true. She laughed, short and bitter. And does it? Cole finally looked at her. You follow me for a reason? Curiosity? Stupidity? Take your pick. She moved closer, and he caught the scent of lavender and tobacco. Name's Catherine Reeves. Used to run the Silver Dollar before I sold it 5 years back. Now I just drink there and watch fools make mistakes. Which one am I? Remains to be seen. She studied him with those sharp eyes. The Maddox Massacre. Everyone around here knows the story. Boy survived somehow, got taken in by the law. We heard he went bad, ended up in Yuma for shooting a merchant in cold blood. That's the story. But not the truth? Cole turned back to the grave. Truth is, I shot a man who tried to kill me first. Truth is, he was one of the gang that night, and I recognized him even though he'd grown a beard and changed his name. Truth is, the law didn't believe a 17-year-old kid over a respected businessman. He paused. Truth is, I spent 15 years locked up for defending myself against the man who helped murder my family. Catherine absorbed this, nodding slowly. The merchant was Richard Hayes. Called himself that, yeah. I knew him. He always seemed nervous, jumpy, like he was expecting something bad to catch up with him. It did. She moved to stand beside him, both of them facing the grave. So Dutch Keller's really dead. That's one name crossed off. Maybe. You keep saying that. Because I don't trust convenient. Cole gestured to the unmarked earth. Man like Dutch Keller doesn't get shot in a card game by some nameless drifter. He gets killed by someone with a reason. Someone who knew what he'd done. Or maybe he just finally ran out of luck. Maybe. But Cole didn't believe it. In his experience, men like Dutch Keller, the ones who rode into darkness for the pure pleasure of it, didn't die easy, didn't die random. They died because someone made it happen. Catherine pulled a small flask from her pocket, took a drink, offered it to Cole. He accepted, tasted good whiskey, better than the saloon served. You really going after the others? Everyone. Even the banker in San Francisco, the man shaking hands with governors? Especially him. She reclaimed the flask, capped it. You know what'll happen. They're rich now, protected. They'll have lawyers, hired guns, politicians in their pockets. You'll be lucky to get within 100 yards before someone puts you down. Probably. And you don't care. It wasn't a question, but Cole answered anyway. I cared for 15 years. Cared about staying alive, about keeping count of days, about remembering every face, every scream, every second of that night. Caring's what kept me breathing. He met her eyes. Now I'm done caring about anything except settling accounts. Catherine studied him for a long moment. I can't tell if you're the bravest man I've ever met, or the most broken. Both. A smile touched her lips, sad and knowing. Yeah, probably both. Cole left Sentinel Springs before dawn, the list of names burning in his pocket like a live coal. Catherine had offered information, contacts in Prescott, people who might know Silas Beaumont's routines, weaknesses, secrets. He'd accepted, filed it away. He worked alone, but that didn't mean he worked stupid. The ride to Prescott took 5 days through high desert country where the land rose in rocky swells and juniper clung to hillsides like stubborn hope. Cole moved at a steady pace, rationing his supplies, sleeping light, always aware of the space around him. Prison had taught him to read threat in the way men stood, the angle of their shoulders, the weight of their silence. Freedom taught him to apply those lessons to empty land, to the quality of bird calls, to tracks in the dust that told stories of who'd passed and when and why. He saw no one, but on the 3rd day he found a camp, recent, maybe 6 hours cold. 3 riders, heading south. One of them had walked with a limp, dragging his left foot slightly. Another had stopped to piss against a mesquite, and Cole read arrogance in the casual way he'd left the yellow stain where anyone could find it. Trackers, scouts, or just cowboys moving between ranches. Cole covered the fire remains with dirt, scattered the rocks, moved on. No sense borrowing trouble when he had plenty already owed. Prescott sprawled across a high plateau surrounded by pine-covered mountains, bigger than Cole expected, more civilized. False front buildings gave way to actual storefronts with glass windows. The streets were graded, not just beaten dirt. He even saw a two-story hotel with a painted sign advertising modern amenities and electric light. Silas Beaumont's name appeared everywhere, on a freight company office, on a land development sign, on the door of a mining speculation office. The man had his fingers in every pie, his brand on every deal. Cole stabled the dun mare at a livery run by a Mexican man with kind eyes and careful hands. "She needs grain, water, and rest," Cole said, paying in advance. "I'll be back in a few days." "Or you won't," the man said quietly. Cole met his eyes. "What's that mean?" "Means I know the look of a man riding toward trouble. Seen it before." He patted the mare's neck. "I'll take good care of her, whether you come back or not." "Appreciate it." Cole found a boarding house on the edge of town, the kind of place that didn't ask questions or require names in a register. The woman who ran it was 70, if she was a day, with steel gray hair and a shotgun propped beside the door. She looked Cole up and down, quoted a price, and showed him to a room barely big enough for the narrow bed and washstand it contained. "Noise after 10, you're out," she said. "Fighting, you're out. Whores, you're out. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good." She paused at the door. "Bathroom's down the hall. You want a bath? It's extra. You look like you could use one." Cole almost smiled. "Yes, ma'am." He spent 2 days watching Silas Beaumont's patterns. The man kept regular hours. Office at 8, lunch at a restaurant called the Golden Nugget at noon, back to the office until 5, then drinks at a private club called the Cattlemen's Association before heading home around 8. Beaumont had gotten soft, prosperous. He wore fine suits, smoked expensive cigars, traveled in a polished carriage. 2 men accompanied him everywhere, guards dressed like gentlemen but moving like fighters. They scanned crowds, checked corners, kept hands near concealed weapons. Beaumont remembered. Good. On the evening of the second day, Cole sat in a diner across from the Golden Nugget, coffee cooling in front of him while he watched Beaumont hold court with 3 other men, businessmen by their clothes, sycophants by their laughter. Beaumont looked comfortable, untouchable. "You gonna drink that coffee or just stare at it?" Cole shifted his attention to the waitress, young, maybe 19, with tired eyes and a stained apron. "Sorry, lost in thought." "Well, think faster. We close in 20 minutes." But her tone carried humor, not irritation. She refilled his cup without asking. "You new in town?" "Just passing through." "Uh-huh. That's what they all say." She nodded toward the restaurant. "You watching someone over there?" Cole's expression didn't change, but inside he adjusted his assessment. Observant, this one. Smart. "Just curious about the menu." "Sure you are." She lowered her voice. "Word of advice? Whatever business you got with Silas Beaumont, walk away from it. He owns this town. The sheriff, the mayor, the judge. You can't touch him." "Wasn't planning to." "Liar." She straightened, speaking louder. "Pie's fresh if you want some. Apple or cherry?" "Cherry." She brought it, set it down with a fork. "That's 2 bits extra." Cole paid, watched her walk away. She glanced back once, worry clear in her eyes. Smart girl. Itchy. The third night, Cole followed Beaumont's carriage home. A large house on the north side of town, 3 stories, wraparound porch, gas lamps flanking a carved oak door, roses in the yard, neat gravel paths, a stable out back. The American dream, built on blood and lies. Cole waited in the shadows across the street, studying the property. 2 guards patrolled, 1 front, 1 back, switching every hour. Lights burned in the downstairs windows until 10, then upstairs until 11. Then darkness, except for a single lamp left burning in what looked like a study. Beaumont lived alone. No wife, no children visible. Just hired help and hired guns. Cole memorized the rhythms, the vulnerabilities, the approach vectors. He'd learned patience in Yuma, but he'd also learned that opportunity was a narrow door that closed quickly. You either walked through when it opened, or you missed your chance entirely. He'd wait 1 more day, confirm the pattern, then he'd act. But as he turned to leave, movement caught his eye, a figure approaching the house from the opposite direction, moving with purpose. Cole melted deeper into shadow, watching. The man was older, 60s maybe, dressed in trail clothes and wearing a gun belt with the ease of long familiarity. He walked up to Beaumont's front door and knocked. 3 times. Pause. Twice more. A signal. The door opened. One of the guards stood there, blocking entry. Words exchanged, too quiet for Cole to hear. Then the guard stepped aside, and the visitor entered. Cole waited. The man stayed inside for 30 minutes, then emerged, spoke briefly with the guard again, and walked away. Not toward town, but toward the dark country beyond. Interesting. Cole followed at a distance, staying to the edges of the street where shadows pooled thick. The man moved with confidence, no backward glances, no awareness of pursuit. He walked a quarter mile to where the houses thinned, then turned into a small cabin set back from the road. Cole circled wide, approached from the side. Lamplight glowed through a window. Inside he could see the man pouring whiskey, settling into a chair, pulling out a pipe. No one else visible. Cole filed it away. Another piece of the puzzle. Tomorrow he'd learn who the man was and what business he had with Silas Beaumont. But tonight he needed rest. Morning brought clouds, the promise of rain. Cole sat in the boarding house eating breakfast, eggs, biscuits, coffee, when the door opened and Catherine Reeves walked in. He kept his expression neutral, but surprise flickered through him. "You following me? Told you I had contacts in Prescott." She pulled out the chair across from him, sat without invitation. "Heard you've been asking questions, watching Beaumont. News travels fast. Small world, smaller when you know the right people." She accepted coffee from the landlady, added sugar. "You planning to kill him?" Cole glanced around. The dining room held 3 other people. 2 men reading newspapers, 1 woman knitting. None paying attention, but that could change. Careful what you say out loud. These folks don't care. Besides, half this town would throw a party if something happened to Beaumont. Then why hasn't it? Because the other half would hang whoever did it, and nobody wants to gamble on which half moves faster. She sipped coffee, made a face. "Jesus, this is terrible. How do you drink this?" "Practice." She laughed, quiet and genuine. "I like you, Cole Maddox. You're either crazy or committed, and I can't figure out which." "Why are you here, Catherine?" Her smile faded. "To warn you. Beaumont knows someone's watching him. He's got people asking around, descriptions being passed. Won't take long before they connect you to Sentinel Springs, to the questions you ask there. Once they do," she spread her hands, "you'll disappear, not dramatically, just quietly, permanently. Appreciate the warning, but you're not leaving." "No." "Didn't think so." She reached into her bag, pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Then you'll need this." Cole opened it. Names, addresses, schedules, a detailed breakdown of Beaumont's business partners, associates, vulnerabilities. "How'd you put it?" "Told you. I know people, and some of us remember what Beaumont was before he bought himself respectability." She stood, left coins for the coffee. "There's a man listed there, Elias Vance. Find him. He can help." "Don't need help. Pride's going to get you killed." "Maybe, but it's kept me alive this long." Catherine paused at the door, looked back. "Your family, they'd want you to live, wouldn't they? Not just survive long enough for revenge, but actually live?" Cole met her eyes. "They'd want justice." Justice and suicide aren't the same thing. She left before he could answer, which was probably wise. He didn't have an answer that would satisfy her anyway. Cole found Elias Vance in a blacksmith shop on the south edge of town, hammering iron with methodical precision. The man matched the description Catherine had given. Mid-50s, graying beard, scarred hands, eyes that had seen too much and forgotten none of it. "Help you?" Vance didn't look up from his work, didn't slow his hammer strokes. "Catherine Reeves sent me." Now the hammer paused. Vance set it aside, examined the horseshoe he'd been shaping, thrust it into the water barrel. Steam hissed. "Catherine needs to learn when to mind her own business. She said you could help." "With what?" "Silas Beaumont." Vance turned, studied Cole with the kind of thorough assessment that came from decades of reading men for truth or lies. "You're the one who's been shadowing him." "Not a question. Cole didn't bother confirming. Let me guess, Vance continued, wiping his hands on a rag. You got a grudge. Something he did years back. Now you're here to settle it. Something like that. And you figure killing him makes things right. Killing him makes things even. Vance snorted, started working the bellows. Even. Hell of a thing to build your life around. He fed Cole to the fire, waited for it to catch. I knew Beaumont before he became respectable. Back when he ran with a gang of worthless bastards who took joy in other people's misery. Saw him do things that'd turn your stomach. Cole's pulse quickened, but he kept his voice level. What gang? Called themselves different things at different times. Dutch Keller's crew mostly, though Dutch was more figurehead than leader. The real brains was the quiet one. Tall fella, always dressed nice even when they were camping rough. Can't recall his name. Thomas Wardlow. Vance's eyes sharpened. That's it. You know him? We've never met, but I know what he did. Then you know he's the one you want, not Beaumont. Beaumont was just muscle, following orders. Wardlow, Vance shook his head. Wardlow planned it all. Every job, every detail. He's the spider in this web. Cole absorbed this, rearranging pieces in his mind. Beaumont still answers to him? Couldn't say. They went their separate ways after the gang fell apart. Beaumont came here, started small, grew his empire. Wardlow headed west, last I heard, San Francisco. But they stay in contact. Maybe. Probably. Men like that, they got dirt on each other. Insurance. Vance selected another piece of iron, placed it in the fire. You want my advice? Forget Beaumont. He's a symptom. Go after the disease. I'm going after all of them. Then you're a fool. Probably. Vance almost smiled. At least you're honest about it. He picked up his hammer again, tested its weight. Catherine tell you I could help? She did. And what makes you think I want to? Cole met his eyes. Because you remember what they did, and you've been waiting for someone angry enough or crazy enough to do something about it. For a long moment, the only sound was the fire crackling and distant street noise filtering through the open door. Then Vance nodded, once, sharp. Beaumont's got a safe in his study, keeps records there, ledgers, letters, evidence of every dirty deal he's ever made. You want to hurt him? Don't kill him, expose him. I want both. Can't always have both. Watch me. Vance returned to his work, hammer striking iron in a rhythm older than memory. Come back tonight, after dark. I'll tell you how to get inside. The rain came at sunset, steady and cold, turning Prescott's streets into rivers of mud. Cole sat in his boarding house room, cleaning his revolver with methodical care, checking the cylinder, oiling the action, loading 6 rounds instead of the usual 5. Tonight there'd be no safety precautions, no hammers resting on empty chambers. Tonight required full commitment. He'd memorized Vance's instructions. The back door lock was old, easily picked. The guards changed position every hour at 1:15. Beaumont retired to his study at 8:30 and stayed there until 10, drinking brandy and reviewing his empire. The safe sat behind a portrait of some dead relative, combination known only to Beaumont. But Vance had supplied something better than the combination. Knowledge of what the safe contained. Letters, confessions, proof. Cole didn't care about proof. He cared about justice. But Vance was right. Exposure could hurt more than bullets. A man like Beaumont, built on respectability, would crumble faster from scandal than gunfire. So Cole would give him both. At 8 o'clock, he left the boarding house, pulling his hat low against the rain. The streets were nearly empty, honest folks staying inside, dishonest ones seeking shelter in saloons. Perfect. He circled Beaumont's house from the south, staying in the shadows between buildings. The guards were visible, one on the front porch, collar turned up against the weather. One in back, smoking beneath the stable eave. 8:15. The back guard stubbed out his cigarette, checked his watch, started walking toward the front. 30 seconds until the front guard made his circuit to the back. Cole moved. He crossed the open yard in a crouch, reached the back door, pulled out the picks Vance had loaned him. His hands remembered this from years ago, before Yuma. A different life, different crimes. The lock surrendered in 20 seconds. Cole slipped inside, eased the door closed behind him. The house smelled of furniture polish and cigars. He stood in a servant's hallway, listening. Footsteps above him, second floor, someone walking. Kitchen sounds to his left, cook preparing dinner. And ahead, through a doorway, the study. Light glowed beneath the door. Cole crossed the hallway on silent feet, pressed his ear to the wood. Heard paper rustling, liquid pouring, a satisfied sigh. Beaumont, alone with his empire. Cole's hand moved to the doorknob. This was it. 15 years of waiting, of planning, of surviving. On the other side of this door sat a man who'd helped destroy everything Cole had ever loved. A man who'd walked away clean, built a new life on blood-soaked foundations, convinced himself the past was forgotten. Cole turned the knob, stepped through, closed the door behind him. Silas Beaumont looked up from his desk, brandy glass halfway to his lips. For 3 full seconds, they stared at each other, the past and present colliding in a moment sharp as broken glass. Then recognition flooded Beaumont's face, followed instantly by fear. "Hello, Silas," Cole said quietly. "We need to talk." Beaumont's hand jerked toward the desk drawer, but Cole's revolver cleared leather faster than thought, the hammer cocking with a sound that froze the room. "Don't!" The word carried no heat, no anger, just absolute certainty. Beaumont's hand stopped, trembling an inch from the drawer. His face had gone pale beneath expensive grooming, brandy sloshing in the glass he still held. "You know who I am," Cole said. Not a question. Beaumont's throat worked. "The Maddox boy." "Not a boy anymore." "I heard. They said you were in Yuma. Life sentence." "They were wrong about a lot of things." Cole stepped deeper into the study, keeping the gun steady. Rain drummed against the windows, muffling the world outside. "Put the glass down. Hands on the desk where I can see them." Beaumont complied, movement slow and careful. "Listen, whatever you think happened, I don't think, I know. September 14th, 1871. Ruby Mountains, Montana Territory, my father's ranch." Cole's voice remained level, conversational almost. "You rode in with Dutch Keller, Billy Crane, James Dockery, and Thomas Wardlow. 5 men. You killed 7 people and burned everything to ash. That's not... it was war. It's... war?" Now something flickered in Cole's eyes, cold and deadly. "My mother wasn't a soldier. My sisters weren't combatants. The ranch hands weren't enemy forces. They were just people trying to live, and you killed them for sport." Beaumont's fingers spread flat on the desk, pressing down like he could push himself through the wood and disappear. "Dutch was in charge. He made the decisions. We just followed. You pulled triggers. You struck matches. You laughed." Cole took another step. "I was hiding in the root cellar, door cracked open just enough to see. I watched you reload twice, watched you drink from my father's whiskey while the house burned, watched you joke about whether the screaming would stop before the roof collapsed." Sweat beaded on Beaumont's forehead despite the cool evening. Jesus Christ. I was a different person then. Young, stupid, following the wrong crowd. And now you're respectable, civilized. You own freight companies and mining operations. You shake hands with the mayor, donate to churches, wear fine suits. Cole's gun never wavered. You built all this on their graves. What do you want? Money? I've got plenty. Name a figure. I want you to remember their names. Beaumont blinked. What? My mother, Clara Maddox. Say her name. Clara Maddox. My father, Samuel Maddox. My sisters, Emma was 9, Grace was 6. Beaumont's voice cracked. Emma and Grace Maddox. The ranch hands, Diego Morales, Diego, John Garrett, Thomas Running Bear. Diego Morales, John Garrett, Thomas Running Bear. Cole lowered the gun slightly, just enough that it pointed at Beaumont's chest instead of his face. Now tell me why. Why what? Why them? They weren't rich, didn't have enemies, just a family working land that wasn't easy to work, trying to build something decent. Cole's jaw tightened. What did they do to deserve what you gave them? Beaumont sagged in his chair, all the fight draining out like water from a broken bucket. Nothing. They did nothing. It was... He pressed his hands to his face. Wardlow wanted the land. Something about mineral rights, potential silver deposits. Your father wouldn't sell, so Wardlow decided to take it different, by making it worthless. By making sure nobody else would want it. Kill the family, burn the buildings, spread rumors about Indian raids, make the whole area feel dangerous. Beaumont looked up, and for a moment something almost human showed in his eyes. I swear I didn't know that was the plan until we were already riding in. Dutch said it was just intimidation, scare tactics. By the time I realized, you stayed anyway. I stayed anyway. The admission came out hollow, and I've spent 15 years trying to forget. How's that working? Beaumont laughed, bitter and broken. I drink myself to sleep every night, see their faces in every shadow. Your mother's voice saying something in those last seconds. I never knew what, but it haunts me worse than the screaming. Grace, your little sister, she was holding a doll, rag thing, homemade. I remember thinking she looked like my niece back in Missouri, same age, same blonde curls. He reached for the brandy bottle with shaking hands, poured more into his glass. So, no. Forgetting's not working at all. Cole studied him, this broken man wearing expensive clothes and sitting in an expensive house built on blood money. Part of him, the part that had survived Yuma by staying hard and cold, wanted to pull the trigger now, end it quick. But another part, smaller and buried deeper, needed to understand. Where are the others? Scattered. Dutch is dead. You probably know that. Crane runs freight out of Santa Fe, last I heard. Dockery bought himself a sheriff's badge in some Colorado mining town. And Wardlow? Beaumont drained his glass in one swallow. Wardlow got exactly what he wanted, became respectable, legitimate. He's in San Francisco now, banker and city councilman, probably going to run for mayor next year. You stay in touch with them? Wardlow sends letters sometimes, checking in, making sure the past stays buried. Crane I haven't heard from in 5 years. Dockery, never. We made a pact the night we split up. No contact, no reunions, no trail to follow. Safer that way. But Wardlow breaks the pact. Wardlow makes the rules. He always did. Beaumont poured again, offered the bottle to Cole. When Cole didn't move, he set it down. There's more about that night. Tell me. Your father wasn't just a rancher. He'd been asking questions in town, writing letters to territorial authorities. He suspected something about the land claims in that area, thought there was fraud happening. Wardlow got wind of it, decided your father was a threat to bigger plans. Cole felt something twist in his chest. My father died because he asked questions? Your father died because he was honest in a world that rewards liars. Beaumont met Cole's eyes. And I helped kill an honest man. No amount of money or respectability changes that. For a long moment, only the rain spoke. Then footsteps sounded in the hallway outside. Heavy boots, purposeful stride. The door opened before Cole could react, and one of Beaumont's guards stepped through. He saw Cole, saw the gun, went for his own weapon. Cole fired once, the shot deafening in the enclosed space, and the guard dropped with a hole in his shoulder. His gun clattered to the floor. Don't move! Beaumont lunged from his chair, scrambling for the fallen weapon. Cole spun, fired again. Not at Beaumont, but past him, shattering the window behind the desk. Cold rain and wind rushed in. He grabbed Beaumont by the collar, hauled him toward the window. How many guards? 2, just 2. The second guard's footsteps thundered on the stairs. Cole dragged Beaumont to the window, pressed the gun barrel under his jaw. Tell him to stand down. Don't shoot! Don't shoot! Beaumont's voice cracked with terror. Marcus, stay back! The footsteps stopped. A voice called from the hallway. Boss? Do what he says, Beaumont gasped. Just do what he says. Cole leaned close, spoke directly into Beaumont's ear. The safe. Open it. What? The safe behind the portrait. Open it now. Beaumont hesitated, and Cole pressed the gun harder. I can kill you and leave, or you can open it and maybe live. Choose fast. Beaumont stumbled to the portrait, some stern-faced ancestor in oil and gilt frame, and swung it aside. The safe was exactly where Vance had said, black iron with a combination dial. Beaumont's fingers fumbled the first attempt, had to start over. Please, if you take those papers, everything I've built, everything you stole, you mean? The safe clicked open. Inside, Cole saw stacks of documents, leather ledgers, bundled letters. He grabbed a handful, stuffed them inside his vest. What else? Money, bonds, deeds to properties. I don't want your money. But Cole took the letters, took anything that looked like correspondence. Evidence, proof. Catherine was right. Sometimes exposure cut deeper than bullets. Behind them, the wounded guard groaned. The one called Marcus shouted from the hallway. I'm coming in! Cole shoved Beaumont toward the desk, vaulted through the broken window into the rain-soaked night. He hit the ground rolling, came up running. Shots cracked behind him, Marcus firing blind through the window. Cole zigzagged across the yard, using the stable for cover. More shouts now, lights coming on in neighboring houses, a dog barking, the whole block waking to violence. Cole reached the shadows between buildings, paused to catch his breath. His heart hammered, but his hand stayed steady. He'd gotten what he came for. Answers, evidence, and the satisfaction of watching Beaumont's carefully constructed world crack like old porcelain. Killing him would have been easier, cleaner. But Vance was right. For men like Beaumont, exposure was worse than death. Cole moved through the darkness, heading for the boarding house. He had maybe 20 minutes before Beaumont organized a real search, called in the sheriff, turned this into a manhunt. Time to collect his things and disappear. But as he crossed an alley mouth, a voice stopped him cold. Impressive. Cole spun, gun coming up. A man stood in the shadows, older, weathered, hands raised in a gesture of peace. The same man Cole had seen visiting Beaumont 3 nights ago. Easy, the man said. I'm not your enemy. Who are you? Elias Vance told you my name, I expect, though we haven't been properly introduced. He stepped into the dim glow of a distant street lamp. I'm nobody important, just someone who's been waiting a long time for somebody like you. Cole kept the gun level. Speak plain or get out of my way. You want the others. Crane, Dockery, Wardlow. You're going after all of them. What's it to you? The man smiled, sad and knowing, because I've been tracking them for 10 years, building a case, gathering evidence, trying to bring them down legal, and I've failed every time. They're too well protected, too connected. He gestured to Cole's vest, where the stolen papers bulged. But you don't care about legal. No. Good. Because legal won't work. These men have bought and paid for the law in every town they touch. The only justice they'll face is the kind you're bringing. Cole studied him, weighing trust against instinct. Why should I believe you? You shouldn't. I'm a stranger offering help you didn't ask for. The man lowered his hand slowly. But I know things, where Crane keeps his real account books, how Dockery got his badge, who Wardlow's afraid of. He paused. And I know about the 6th name. Everything in Cole went still. What 6th name? The one who wasn't at your ranch that night but gave the order. The one Wardlow answers to, the one who actually owns the mineral rights to your father's land. The man's voice dropped lower. The man who's been watching you since you got out of Yuma, waiting to see if you'd be a threat. Cole's mind raced. Who? Meet me tomorrow night. Old Mission Church, south end of town. Come alone. The man started backing into shadow. My name's Callahan, former Pinkerton, current nobody. And if you want to finish this, really finish it, you'll need what I know. Wait. But Callahan was gone, melted into darkness like he'd never been there at all. Cole stood in the alley, rain soaking through his clothes, stolen papers pressed against his chest, and questions multiplying like rabbits in spring. A 6th name. Someone above Wardlow. Someone watching. Behind him, whistles blew. Men shouted. The hunt had begun. Cole ran. He made it to the boarding house, took the back stairs 3 at a time. His room was exactly as he'd left it, sparse, temporary, already half abandoned. He grabbed his saddlebags, stuffed in his few belongings and the stolen documents. Left money on the bed for the landlady. She'd done nothing wrong except rent to the wrong man. Out the back window, down a rain-slick roof, dropped to the alley below. His ankle protested the landing, but held. He moved through back streets, keeping to shadow and silence. The livery stable loomed ahead, dark and quiet. Cole circled it once, checking for watchers. Saw none. He slipped inside through the side door. The Mexican stableman was waiting, lantern in hand, the dun mare already saddled. He didn't look surprised. Thought you might need her sooner than expected. How much do I owe you? Nothing. Just go before they think to check here. He handed Cole the reins. There's a trail behind the stable, leads north into the mountains. Follow it 3 miles. You'll hit the main road to Santa Fe. But I'd avoid that road for a few days. Cole swung into the saddle. Why are you helping me? The stableman's face creased with old grief. 20 years ago, men like Beaumont burned my brother's ranch in Sonora, killed his family. He survived, spent 10 years hunting them, and they killed him too. Buried him in an unmarked grave somewhere in the desert. He patted the mare's neck. So when I see a man riding toward the same fate, I figure the least I can do is make sure his horse is ready. I'm not planning to die. Nobody ever is. The stableman opened the back door. Vaya con suerte, amigo. Cole rode into the rain-washed night, thunder rumbling in the mountains like distant drums. Behind him, Prescott burned with torchlight and angry voices. Ahead, the trail wound into darkness. He thought about Callahan's words. A 6th name, someone watching. It made terrible sense. Men like Wardlow didn't operate without backing, without someone holding the real power. All this time, Cole had been focused on the trigger pullers. But what if he'd been aiming at the wrong targets? The trail climbed, steep and treacherous in the wet. The mare picked her way carefully, trusting her footing more than vision. Cole let her choose the path, his mind elsewhere. He pulled out the stolen letters, tried to read them by lightning flash. Most were mundane, business correspondence, shipping invoices, property transfers. But one caught his attention, dated 3 months ago, written in elegant script. S. The Maddox situation requires monitoring. Our mutual friend reports the boy was released from Yuma. If he proves troublesome, handle it quietly. No repeat of Montana. We have too much at stake now. T. Thomas Wardlow. Warning Beaumont about Cole, which meant Wardlow had been tracking him, waiting to see if revenge would bring him calling. They'd known he was coming, and they'd let him anyway. Why? Another letter, older, edges yellowed with age. Cole recognized the date, 2 weeks after the massacre. The Maddox property is secured. Boy survived, but authorities believe our cover story. Focus now on the larger operation. Silver assays confirm initial estimates. Minimum 2 million in extractable ore, possibly more. The railroad will require delicate negotiations. J has agreed to handle legal complications in Denver. B will maintain territorial claims. You focus on San Francisco connections. In 5 years, nobody will remember a dead rancher and his family. In 10, we'll own half the territory. T. Cole's hands shook. Not from cold, from rage so pure it burned like acid in his veins. 5 years. 10 years. They'd calculated it all, planned it like a business venture. His family's lives reduced to obstacles, their deaths mere footnotes in a larger scheme. And it had worked. Beaumont owned Prescott. Wardlow sat on San Francisco's city council. Somewhere, men named B and J, Billy Crane, James Dockery, had carved out their own empires. All built on 7 graves. The trail leveled out onto a high ridge. Cole reined in, looked back. Prescott was a scatter of lights below, distant now, fading. He'd hurt Beaumont tonight, exposed him. Those stolen documents would find their way to the right people. Catherine would see to that. Beaumont's empire would crumble. But it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the world in stark white and black. For one frozen instant, Cole saw the path ahead with perfect clarity. Not just the physical trail, but the road he'd chosen. It led through Santa Fe, through Colorado, all the way to San Francisco. It led through blood and fire and justice delayed so long it had curdled into something darker. Revenge? Maybe. But also reckoning. The kind that didn't care about courts or laws or civilized notions of proportional response. The kind that only ended when the scales balanced or the seeker died trying. Thunder rolled. The mare shifted, anxious to move. Cole touched his heels to her flanks, and they descended into the valley beyond. 3 days later, Cole sat in a cantina in a nameless border town, eating beans and tortillas while rain hammered the tin roof. He'd avoided main roads, stuck to game trails and dry washes, seen no pursuit. Either Beaumont was keeping quiet about the robbery, didn't want to explain what was in those papers, or the search had moved in different directions. Either way, Cole was cautious. He'd changed his hat, bought a different jacket from a peddler, let 3 days of stubble shadow his face. Small changes, but enough to break his silhouette. He was studying a map, plotting the route to Santa Fe, when someone slid into the seat across from him. Catherine Reeves. Cole didn't react, just kept chewing. "You're persistent. You're predictable." She flagged down the cantina owner, ordered coffee in fluent Spanish. "I figured you'd head south, avoid the main roads, hole up somewhere to plan your next move. Only 3 towns within reasonable riding distance. This was the second one I checked." "What do you want?" "To make sure you're not dead." The coffee arrived, and she wrapped both hands around the cup like it was winter instead of early autumn. "Beaumont's hired a dozen men to find you. Pinkerton detectives, bounty hunters, a few gunslingers with mean reputations. He wants you bad. Let him want. They'll find you eventually. You know that." "Maybe." Catherine sipped coffee, made the same face she'd made at the boarding house. "How do you drink this rotgut?" She pushed the cup away. "I brought you something." She slid a leather portfolio across the table. Cole opened it, found more documents, different from the ones he'd stolen, but equally damning. Property records showing Beaumont had claimed Cole's father's land through a proxy company. Assay reports confirming silver deposits. Letters between Beaumont and territorial officials, suggesting bribes had changed hands. "Where'd you get these?" "Friends who owe me favors, or maybe enemies of Beaumont who see opportunity." She smiled, sharp and dangerous. "I told you, I know people." And once word spread that someone had broken into Beaumont's safe, certain folks became very interested in making sure the right information surfaced. Cole studied the documents. "This proves they murdered my family for mining rights. It proves they had motive. Not quite the same as proof of murder, but enough to raise questions, especially combined with what you already took." She leaned forward. "I gave copies to 3 different newspapers, Prescott, Phoenix, Tucson. By next week, Silas Beaumont's name will be mud. He'll deny everything." "Of course. But mud sticks. His business partners will distance themselves. His political friends will forget his name. His empire won't collapse overnight, but it'll crack." And cracks spread. Cole carefully repacked the documents. "Why are you doing this?" Catherine's expression shifted, something old and painful flickering across her face. "Because 15 years ago, I had a daughter. 8 years old, red hair, loved horses. We lived in Silver City, New Mexico territory. One night, a gang rode through, robbing houses at random. They kicked in our door, demanded valuables. I gave them everything. Jewelry, cash, even my wedding ring." She paused, staring at something Cole couldn't see. "It wasn't enough. One of them, young guy, barely older than a kid himself, decided to teach me a lesson about hiding money. He grabbed my daughter, held a gun to her head, said if I didn't produce more money in 10 seconds, he'd shoot." Jesus. I begged, pleaded, told him there was nothing left. He pulled the trigger anyway. Her voice stayed level, but her hands trembled. "Then they all laughed, said the gun wasn't loaded, just wanted to scare me. They rode away laughing." She met Cole's eyes. "My daughter didn't speak for 6 months. When she finally did, she wasn't the same. 3 years later, she killed herself, 15 years old. Left a note saying she couldn't stop hearing that click, couldn't stop feeling that gun against her head." Cole said nothing. There was nothing to say. "I spent years trying to find those men, hired investigators, followed rumors, bankrupted myself on the search. Never found them. Eventually I gave up. Figured some evils just go unpunished." Catherine's smile was bitter. "Then you walked into my saloon asking about Dutch Keller, and I saw something I recognized. Same look I used to see in my mirror, same hunger for balance. I'm sorry about your daughter. Don't be sorry. Help me make sure what happened to her, to your family, doesn't keep happening." She stood, dropped coins on the table. "Santa Fe's a week's ride. Billy Crane runs a freight company called High Desert Transport. Big operation, lots of guards, but I've got information on his routes, his schedules, his vulnerabilities. You want it?" "Yes." She produced another envelope, set it beside the portfolio. "Then take it. And when you find Crane, make him remember every sin he's ever committed. Make him say their names." She turned to leave, paused. "The old mission church in Prescott. You know it? Callahan mentioned it. He's solid. Strange, but solid. Former Pinkerton who got too close to something big and ended up blacklisted. Been working alone for years, building cases nobody will prosecute. If he says there's a sixth name, believe him. You know him? Only by reputation, but reputation counts for something out here. She pulled her coat tighter. Watch your back, Cole Maddox. You've stirred up a hornet's nest, and hornets don't forget. She left before he could respond, disappearing into the rain like smoke. Cole sat alone, surrounded by evidence of conspiracy, maps marking targets, and questions multiplying faster than answers. A sixth name. Someone above Wardlow. Someone powerful enough to orchestrate massacres and bury the evidence. He thought about Catherine's daughter, about his own sisters, about how many other families had been destroyed by men who faced no consequences, who built empires on unmarked graves. The cantina owner brought more coffee. Cole drank it this time, barely tasting it. His mind was already in Santa Fe, already planning. Billy Crane thought he was safe, thought the past was dead and buried. He was wrong. They were all wrong. And Cole was going to spend however long it took proving it. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Stars appeared between breaking clouds, cold and distant and uncaring. Cole gathered his papers, paid his bill, walked into the night. The mare waited where he'd tied her, patient and steady. Santa Fe, he said quietly, swinging into the saddle. Then Colorado, then San Francisco. The mare's ears flicked back, listening. And if there's a sixth name, Cole continued, more to himself than the horse, we'll find him too, every last one, until the scales balance, or I'm dead. He rode north under clearing skies, a ghost pursuing ghosts, carrying stolen proof of old crimes toward an uncertain reckoning. Behind him, Prescott would wake to scandal. Ahead, Santa Fe waited, unaware. And somewhere in the darkness between, men who thought they'd escape justice were about to learn that some debts never expire. Some sins follow you forever. Some boys grow into the kind of men who don't forgive, don't forget, and sure as hell don't stop. Santa Fe rose from the high desert like a promise half kept. Ancient adobe walls painted gold by morning sun, church bells ringing across plazas where Spanish and American cultures collided in uneasy marriage. Cole rode in on the 8th day, trail-worn and watchful, the dun mare carrying him through narrow streets that smelled of roasting chilies and wood smoke. High Desert Transport occupied 3 buildings on the commercial district's eastern edge, warehouses, stables, and an office with Billy Crane's name painted in letters tall enough to read from 100 yards. The operation was bigger than Cole expected, wagons constantly loading and unloading, teamsters shouting in English and Spanish, guards posted at every entrance wearing matching vests and carrying shotguns. Crane had built himself a kingdom, small, loud, profitable. Cole found a boarding house run by a widow named Martinez who asked no questions and accepted payment in advance. His room overlooked an alley where chickens scratched in the dirt and children played a game involving rocks in a chalked circle. Normal life. The kind his sisters never got to finish living. He unpacked Catherine's intelligence, spread it across the narrow bed. Crane's routine was predictable. Office from dawn until 3, then drinks at a cantina called El Oso Negro, home by 7 to a house on the Western Hills. Tuesdays and Thursdays, he personally supervised shipments to outlying mining camps, rode in an armored wagon with 4 guards, never deviated from established routes. Today was Tuesday. Cole checked his revolver, reloaded it with fresh cartridges, slid it back into leather. He'd been carrying the same gun for 15 years, first stolen from the marshal who arrested him, kept hidden through Yuma despite 3 separate searches, retrieved from a corrupt guard who'd held it for the price of future silence. The weapon fit his hand like memory, like grief, like purpose. He left the boarding house as shadows lengthened, walked through streets where vendors called out daily specials and old men sat outside shops arguing politics in Spanish. Nobody gave him a second glance. He'd become good at being invisible, at moving through the world like smoke through a screen door. El Oso Negro sat on a corner where commercial district met residential, a sprawling cantina with a second floor, and a courtyard where musicians played on weekends. Cole entered through the front, immediately cataloging exits, back door to the kitchen, side entrance to the courtyard, stairs to the second floor. 3 ways out if things went wrong. The interior was dim and cool, thick adobe walls keeping out the day's heat. A dozen patrons occupied tables, most nursing drinks and talking quiet. Behind the bar, a heavy-set man with a magnificent mustache polished glasses with mechanical precision. Cole took a corner table with sight lines to both entrances, ordered whiskey when the barkeep's daughter came around. She was young, 17 maybe, with her father's dark eyes and her mother's careful smile. "Anything else, senor?" "Information. Billy Crane comes here, doesn't he?" Her smile flickered. "Sometimes." "Today?" I couldn't say. But her eyes flicked toward the stairs just for a second. Cole slid a silver dollar across the table. "I need to talk to him. Private matter." She looked at the coin, at Cole, at the coin again. Then she leaned close, voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Third door on the left, upstairs. He's there now with his bookkeeper going over accounts, but his guards are downstairs, 2 of them, at the table by the kitchen." "Thank you." She took the dollar, hesitated. "He's not a good man, senor. Whatever business you have, be careful." Cole almost smiled. "I will." She left, and Cole turned his attention to the guards. Both were large, confident, wearing the high desert transport vests. One was older, 40-something, with the scarred knuckles of a brawler. The other was younger, nervous, hand resting near his holstered pistol like he expected trouble. They weren't watching the stairs. They were watching the front door. Mistake. Cole finished his whiskey, stood, walked toward the back like he was heading for the privy. Nobody stopped him. He reached the stairs, climbed them slow and quiet, boots barely whispering against wood. The second-floor hallway smelled of old tobacco and older secrets. 3 doors on the left, 2 on the right, all closed. Cole moved to the third door, pressed his ear against it. Voices inside. 2 men arguing about numbers, invoices, payments owed, and payments made. One voice Cole didn't recognize, nasally and irritated. The other hit him like a fist to the gut. Billy Crane. Older, rougher, but unmistakable. The same voice that had laughed while Cole's house burned. Cole's hand moved to the doorknob, turned it slow. Unlocked. He drew his revolver, took one breath, kicked the door open hard enough to slam it against the wall. 2 men spun toward him, one behind a desk covered in ledgers, the other standing beside a window. The one at the desk was thin, balding, wearing spectacles and a look of pure terror. Not Crane. The one by the window was. 15 years had thickened him, grayed his hair, added lines to his face. But the eyes were the same, pale blue, calculating, empty of anything resembling conscience. He saw Cole, saw the gun, and his hand dropped toward his waistband. "Don't!" Cole's voice was ice. "I'll kill you before you clear leather." Crane's hand froze. His face cycled through expressions, confusion, recognition, fear, then something worse. Resignation. The Maddox boy. Not anymore. The bookkeeper made a small sound like air escaping a punctured tire. "Mr. Crane, I don't—" "Shut up, Vernon." Crane's eyes never left Cole. "How'd you find me?" "Same way I'll find the others. Patience and dead men's secrets. Beaumont. Among others." Crane's jaw tightened. "You kill him?" "Worse. Exposed him. By now, half of Arizona territory knows what he did, what he is. His empire's collapsing as we speak." Cole stepped deeper into the room, keeping the gun level. "Your turn." "My turn for what? Public humiliation?" Crane laughed, bitter and sharp. "You think I built this company clean? You think my hands aren't already dirty? Everyone in Santa Fe knows Billy Crane came from nothing, clawed his way up through whatever means necessary. Revealing old crimes won't change anything. Maybe not, but it'll give the families of your victims names to put on the graves." "What families? We made sure there were no witnesses." "Except me." "Yeah." Crane's expression shifted, something almost like regret flickering across his features. "Except you. That was Dutch's mistake. Wardlow wanted everyone dead, no exceptions. Dutch said killing a kid would bring too much heat. So we left you in that cellar, figured you'd die anyway. Smoke, fire, or just plain terror." He shook his head. "Should have listened to Wardlow." The bookkeeper whimpered. "Please, I have a family." "Then leave." Cole gestured with the gun toward the door. "This doesn't concern you." Vernon didn't wait for permission. He scrambled for the exit, ledgers forgotten, disappearing down the hall in a clatter of panicked footsteps. His departure would alert the guards downstairs. Cole had maybe 2 minutes. "Just you and me now," Crane said. His hand had drifted closer to his waistband. "The way it should be." "Tell me about the 6th name." Crane blinked. "What?" "Someone above Wardlow. Someone giving orders. Who is he?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Cole cocked the hammer. "Lie again." "I'm not lying. Wardlow was in charge. He planned everything, made all the decisions. Wardlow worked for someone. Someone with enough money and power to orchestrate land grabs across 3 territories. Someone still watching, still pulling strings." Cole stepped closer. "Catherine Reeves gave me documents proving the conspiracy. Callahan claims there's a puppeteer behind it all. And you're going to tell me his name before I put a bullet in your skull." Crane's face had gone pale. "You talked to Callahan?" "Not yet. Meeting him tomorrow. But if you tell me now, maybe I let you live long enough to run." "Run where?" "If Callahan's involved, if he's finally talking." Crane sank into his chair, suddenly looking 10 years older. "You don't understand. This isn't just about your family. It's bigger. The land grab, the mining rights. That was just one piece. There's railroad contracts, water rights, entire towns built on forged claims. And at the center of it all," he paused, fear naked on his face. "At the center is a man you can't touch, can't kill, can't even name without consequences. Try me." Footsteps thundered on the stairs. The guards coming fast. Crane's eyes flicked toward the door, calculating. "His name is—" Cole grabbed Crane by the collar, hauled him toward the window. "Say it!" "Marcus Aldridge," Crane shouted as the door burst open. "Silver Baron, railroad magnate, owns half of Nevada." One of the guards fired, the shot deafening in the enclosed space. Cole felt the bullet pass close enough to feel its heat, spun, fired back. The older guard dropped, clutching his leg. The younger one dove for cover behind the doorframe. Cole shoved Crane through the window. Glass shattered, wood splintered, and Crane screamed as he fell 10 feet into the courtyard below. Cole vaulted after him, hit hard, rolled, came up with his gun still in hand. Crane was crawling toward the courtyard gate, leg twisted at a wrong angle, face contorted in agony. "You broke my goddamn leg." "Be grateful it's not your neck." Cole hauled him upright, used him as a shield as the young guard appeared at the window above. "Stay back or he dies." The guard hesitated, gun wavering. Behind him, Vernon's voice shrieked something incomprehensible. More guards would be coming, drawn by gunfire and chaos. Cole had seconds, not minutes. He dragged Crane toward the gate, the freight operator howling with every step. They burst into an alley, startling chickens and a dog that barked furiously at the intrusion. Cole kept moving, half carrying Crane's weight, heading for the maze of streets beyond. "You're insane," Crane gasped. "You can't escape. This whole town—" "Shut up." Cole turned a corner, then another, working from memory of the map he'd studied. 2 blocks south, then east, then through the plaza. His horse waited at the boarding house, saddled and ready, because Cole never left himself without an exit. Behind them, whistles blew. Men shouted, the hunt spreading like wildfire through dry grass. Cole pulled Crane into a recessed doorway, pressed him against the wall. "Marcus Aldridge, tell me everything." "I can't. He'll kill me." "I'll kill you first." Cole pressed the gun barrel under Crane's jaw. "Start talking." Crane's breath came in ragged gasps, sweat pouring down his face. "Aldridge owns the Comstock mines in Nevada. 6 railroad companies, land from California to Colorado. He's worth millions, has senators in his pocket, governors on his payroll. 10 years ago, he had a vision. Consolidate power across the Western territories before they become states. Lock down resources before the government can regulate." "And my father's land?" "Part of the larger plan. Small piece, but strategically located. Silver deposits worth a fortune, plus it controlled water rights for 3 valleys. Wardlow identified it as a target, Aldridge approved the acquisition, and—" Crane swallowed hard. "And we were the hammer that drove the nail." "Wardlow works for Aldridge, we all did. Still do in ways. Beaumont manages territorial claims, Dockery handles legal problems, wears a badge, but answers to Aldridge. I run freight, make sure Aldridge's goods move without interference. We're all cogs in his machine. Crane's voice dropped to a whisper. And the machine doesn't stop, can't stop. Too much money, too much power, too many people invested in keeping it running. Cole absorbed this, pieces clicking into place. A conspiracy not of 5 men, but of dozens, hundreds. A network spanning territories, corrupting everything it touched. And at the center, a man so wealthy and protected that even knowing his name felt dangerous. Where's Aldridge now? San Francisco. Has a mansion on Nob Hill, office in the financial district, but you'll never get close. He's got private guards, political connections, friends in every law enforcement agency west of the Mississippi. Crane managed a pained laugh. You think Beaumont was protected? Aldridge makes him look like a church mouse. Voices nearby, getting closer. Cole pulled Crane from the doorway, kept moving. They emerged onto a side street, less populated, heading toward the boarding house 2 blocks distant. Dockery, Cole said. Where is he? Colorado. Town called Silverton, up in the San Juan Mountains. Mining territory, rough country. He's the sheriff there, keeps order for Aldridge's interests. Runs the town like his personal fiefdom. Crane stumbled, leg buckling. Please, I've told you everything. Let me go. I'll disappear. Change my name. You'll never see me again. You'll never see anyone again. Cole's voice was flat, emotionless. You killed 7 people for a paycheck. You laughed while children died. You don't get to disappear. Crane's face crumpled. I was young, stupid, following orders. So was I, 12 years old, hiding in a cellar, watching my world burn. Difference is, I didn't have a choice. Cole shoved him forward. Keep moving. They reached the boarding house. Mrs. Martinez stood in the doorway, eyes wide, hand pressed to her mouth. She saw Cole, saw Crane, and quickly stepped aside. I'm sorry for the trouble, Cole said. My horse, in the stable, como always. Her voice was steady despite her fear. Go, senor, quickly. Cole dragged Crane to the stable, found the dun mare exactly where he'd left her. He heaved Crane across the saddle, belly down like a sack of grain, and swung up behind him. The added weight made the mare nervous, but she responded to Cole's touch, moving when he asked. They rode out the back way through an alley that opened onto the road heading north. Behind them, Santa Fe churned with alarm, bells ringing, men running, chaos spreading. Cole kept the mare at a steady trot, not fast enough to attract attention, not slow enough to get caught. 3 miles north of town, he turned off the main road onto a narrow trail that wound into rocky hills dotted with juniper and piñon. The land rose steep and unforgiving until Santa Fe was just a smudge of smoke and civilization far below. Cole reined in beside a dry wash, dismounted, pulled Crane down from the saddle. The freight operator collapsed, leg useless, face gray with pain and fear. What are you going to do? His voice shook. Cole didn't answer. He pulled out the list, that worn piece of paper he'd carried for 15 years. Found Billy Crane's name, drew a line through it with slow deliberation. You're going to kill me. Yes. After everything I told you? After I cooperated? You cooperated to save yourself, not because you felt remorse. Cole holstered the list, drew his revolver. And nothing you said changes what you did. Crane's eyes filled with tears. I have a son, 8 years old. His mother died in childbirth, and I'm all he has. You kill me. You make him an orphan. Something twisted in Cole's chest, sharp and bitter. My sisters were 9 and 6. They had a mother and father who loved them. You made them orphans first. Please say their names. Crane blinked. What? Emma and Grace Maddox. Say their names. Emma and Grace Maddox. Clara Maddox, Samuel Maddox, Diego Morales, John Garrett, Thomas Running Bear. Cole's voice stayed level, but his hand trembled. Say all of them. Crane repeated each name, stumbling over pronunciations, crying openly now. When he finished, Cole nodded once. Thank you. He pulled the trigger. The shot echoed across empty hills, startling birds from nearby trees. Crane fell back, eyes still open, surprise frozen on his face. Blood spread across his chest, dark and final. Cole stood there for a long moment, watching the life drain from a man who'd helped kill his family. He waited for satisfaction, for closure, for some sense that balance had been restored. Instead, he felt hollow, empty, like he'd poured himself out and found nothing underneath. He dragged Crane's body into the wash, covered it with rocks and brush. Not a proper burial, but more than Crane deserved. The man's son would wonder what happened to his father, would grow up with questions and absence, just like Cole had. The irony wasn't lost on him. But it didn't change anything either. He mounted the mare, turned her north toward Colorado, toward Silverton, toward James Dockery. 3 names crossed off, 2 more to go, plus Aldridge, the 6th name, the puppeteer. The list was getting shorter, but the weight wasn't getting lighter. 2 days into the Colorado high country, Cole stopped at a trading post run by a Ute woman and her half-white son. They sold him supplies, coffee, ammunition, asked no questions about the haunted look in his eyes or the way he checked the horizon every few minutes. "You running from something?" the woman asked as she wrapped his purchases. "Toward something," Cole corrected. "Amounts to the same, usually." She tied the bundle with practiced efficiency. "My son saw men pass through yesterday. 6 riders, well-armed, asking about strangers. They left heading north, same direction you're going." Cole absorbed this. "Aldridge's men?" She raised an eyebrow. "You know that name. You know enough to be careful. They're not lawmen. They're hunters. Let them hunt. Pride kills more men than bullets out here." "I'll keep that in mind." Cole paid, accepted the bundle. "If they come back asking about me, I never saw you." She met his eyes, and he saw understanding there. Whatever her story, whatever had brought her to this isolated place, she knew about running, about hiding, about the kind of trouble that didn't announce itself with badges. Cole rode into mountains that scraped the sky, following trails that switch-backed up impossible grades. Aspens turned gold with approaching autumn, their leaves rattling in wind that cut like knives. The air thinned, making breathing hard, making the mare work for every step. He thought about Marcus Aldridge, a name he'd never heard, a man whose power extended across territories like a spider's web. Beaumont, Crane, Dockery, even Wardlow, they were all just extensions of Aldridge's will, tools he'd used and discarded or kept depending on their utility. The real architect of the Maddox massacre wasn't the men who'd pulled triggers. It was the man who'd pointed them at targets and promised profit. Cole had been aiming at symptoms. Time to go for the disease. But first Dockery, then Wardlow. He'd work his way up the chain, gathering evidence, leaving bodies, until Aldridge had nowhere to hide and no one to protect him. On the 4th day he saw Silverton, a rough mining town clinging to mountainsides like a desperate prayer. Buildings stacked against impossible slopes, minework scarring the peaks above. Smoke rose from dozens of sources, and even from a distance Cole could hear the stamp mills pounding ore into submission. A hard town. Fitting that Dockery had found a home here. Cole didn't ride straight in. He circled, found high ground, studied the layout through a spyglass he'd bought at the trading post. The town was bigger than he expected, maybe 2,000 people, with a main street that climbed at an angle and side streets that were more like ladders. The sheriff's office sat on the main drag, easy to spot with its barred windows and signs swinging in the wind. Cole watched it for an hour, memorizing patterns. Deputies came and went, prisoners shuffled in chains, business as usual. But no sign of Dockery. As shadows lengthened, a man emerged from a building down the street, saloon by the sound of piano music that followed him. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a long coat and a flat-brimmed hat. Even at distance, Cole recognized his walk, confident, proprietary, the stride of a man who owned everything he saw. James Dockery. Sheriff, murderer, cog in Aldridge's machine. Cole watched him cross to the sheriff's office, speak with a deputy, then mount a large bay horse and ride out of town heading west. Alone. Opportunity. Cole paralleled his course, staying in the trees, using the terrain to remain invisible. Dockery rode like a man without concerns, whistling tunelessly, occasionally taking swigs from a flask. He followed a trail that climbed into wilder country, away from the mines, away from civilization. After 5 miles, Dockery turned off the trail onto what looked like a game path. Cole followed at a distance, increasingly curious. Where was the sheriff going, alone, as night approached? The answer appeared 15 minutes later, a small cabin tucked into a clearing, smoke rising from its chimney, a single window glowing with lamplight. Dockery dismounted, tied his horse, and knocked. The door opened, and Cole caught a glimpse of a woman before Dockery stepped inside. Interesting. Cole circled the clearing, found a spot with clear sight lines to the cabin. He settled in to wait, pulling jerky from his saddlebags and chewing while he watched. The mare dozed on her feet, patient and unquestioning. An hour passed. 2. The lamp inside burned steady, shadows moving behind the curtained window. Cole considered his options. Confront Dockery here? Follow him back to town? Wait for a better opportunity? The decision was made for him when the cabin door opened and Dockery emerged, alone, walking with the careful precision of a man who'd had a few drinks but wasn't quite drunk. He stood in the clearing, looking at the stars, and said something to the woman still inside that Cole couldn't hear. Then he mounted his horse and rode back toward the trail. Cole let him get 100 yards ahead, then followed. They were a mile from the cabin, deep in shadow beneath tall pines, when Cole spurred the mare forward and called out, "James Dockery!" The sheriff reined in hard, hand dropping to his gun. He turned in the saddle, peered into darkness. "Who's there?" Cole rode into a patch of moonlight. "Someone you should have killed 15 years ago." Even in the dim light, Cole saw recognition flood Dockery's face, saw fear follow close behind. "Jesus Christ! Wrong name!" Cole's gun cleared leather smooth and fast. "Try Emma Maddox. Grace Maddox. Clara Maddox." Dockery drew fast for a big man. He got off one shot that went wide, spooking both horses. Then Cole fired twice, center mass, and Dockery tumbled backward out of the saddle. He hit the ground hard, gasping, hands clutching at wounds that bled black in the moonlight. Cole dismounted, walked over, kicked Dockery's gun into the trees. You son of a... Dockery coughed, blood on his lips. "You can't... badge... law." "You hide behind that badge like it means something." Cole knelt beside him. "But badges don't wash blood off hands. They just make it harder to see. Aldridge will kill you. Everyone you know. Let him try." Cole pulled out his list, showed it to the dying man. 3 names crossed off, 2 more to go, then Aldridge. "I'm patient, I'm thorough, and I don't forget." Dockery's eyes widened as he read the list, saw his own name with a line through it. "You're... insane. Maybe. Or maybe I'm the only sane one left." Cole stood, looked down at the man who'd helped slaughter his family. 15 years I waited. 15 years I planned. And now you die knowing your master's next. He'll protect Wardlow. Let him. Makes it more satisfying when they both fall. Dockery tried to say something else, but blood filled his throat. He choked, convulsed, went still. His eyes stayed open, staring at nothing. Cole retrieved Dockery's badge, pocketed it. Evidence. Proof. One more piece in the puzzle. He dragged the body off the trail, covered it minimally. By morning, scavengers would make identification difficult. The woman in the cabin would wonder why her visitor never came back. The town would search, maybe find him, maybe not. Either way, James Dockery wouldn't be enforcing Aldridge's will anymore. Cole rode through the night, putting distance between himself and Silverton. The mare was tired but willing, pushing through dark miles without complaint. They stopped at dawn beside a stream, and Cole let her drink while he cleaned his gun and reloaded. 4 names crossed off. 1 more before Aldridge. Thomas Wardlow, banker, city councilman, the architect who'd identified targets and planned massacres, the man smart enough to distance himself from the violence while profiting from its results. San Francisco, city of fog and gold and corruption so deep it had its own gravity. Cole looked west toward the Pacific, toward his final targets. The journey felt endless, but also inevitable. Like he'd been riding this path his whole life since the night he'd hidden in a cellar and listened to his world die. He mounted the mare, pointed her toward the setting sun, and rode on. Behind him, 4 graves marked his passage. Ahead, 2 more waited to be filled, and somewhere beyond them all, Marcus Aldridge sat in his mansion counting money built on blood, convinced his power made him untouchable. He was about to learn different. The Pacific wind hit Cole like a living thing when he crested the final ridge and saw San Francisco spread below. A city of impossible hills and ambitious dreams, buildings packed so tight they seemed to hold each other upright. Fog rolled through the streets like searching fingers, and somewhere in that maze of wealth and corruption, Thomas Wardlow lived the life he'd bought with other people's blood. Cole had sold the dun mare in Sacramento, knowing she'd draw too much attention in a city. He'd bought plain clothes, a cheap hat, let his beard grow fuller. In Silverton, word would be spreading about a dead sheriff. In Santa Fe, about a missing freight operator. In Prescott, about stolen documents and public scandal. By now, Aldridge would know someone was cutting down his network, working methodically toward the center. Let him know. Let him prepare. It wouldn't matter. The boarding house Cole found was in the Mission District, run by an Irish widow named Mrs. O'Brien, who claimed to have fled the famine 30 years ago and never looked back. She charged $2 a week, provided breakfast, and maintained strict rules about noise, visitors, and moral behavior. "You looking for work?" she asked as she showed him to a narrow room on the third floor. "Maybe. Depends what's available. City's always hiring. Docks, construction, warehouses. You look strong enough." She studied him with sharp blue eyes. "You running from something?" "Toward something." She laughed, short and knowing. "That's what they all say. Just don't bring trouble to my door, and we'll get along fine." Cole spent 3 days learning the city's rhythms. San Francisco was nothing like the frontier towns he'd known. Here, money flowed like water, fortunes made and lost on handshakes and stock tips. The wealthy lived on Nob Hill in mansions that overlooked the bay, while the poor packed into boarding houses and tenements below. Between them sprawled the commercial district where banks, offices, and exchanges built empires on paper and ambition. Wardlow's bank occupied a prime corner on Montgomery Street, 3 stories of marble and brass, with his name carved above the entrance in letters that caught the sun. Pacific Heritage Trust. Cole watched it from across the street, noting the guards at the entrance, the armed men who escorted money wagons, the careful precision of everything. Wardlow himself arrived each morning at 9, riding in a private carriage with curtained windows. He'd grown prosperous, filled out his frame with good food and fine tailoring. His hair was silver now, neatly trimmed, and he carried a walking stick with a silver handle, though he didn't limp. Affectation, not necessity. Cole followed him for a week, mapping his patterns. Office until 5, then drinks at the Pacific Club where city councilmen and railroad barons plotted their schemes. Home by 8 to a mansion on Nob Hill. Dinners with other wealthy men and their polished wives. Sundays he attended services at Grace Cathedral, sat in a private box, donated generously to charity. The perfect citizen, the model of success. On the 8th day, Cole found Callahan waiting in his boarding house room. The former Pinkerton sat in the room's only chair, hat on his knee, looking like he'd been there for hours. He didn't stand when Cole entered, just nodded once. "Took you long enough to get here." Cole closed the door, checked the hallway, then turned back. "How'd you find me?" "I'm good at finding people. Used to be my job." Callahan gestured to the bed. "Sit. We need to talk." "I'm fine standing." "Suit yourself." Callahan pulled out a newspaper, tossed it on the bed. "You've been busy." Cole glanced at the headlines. Stories about Beaumont's fall from grace, about Billy Crane's mysterious disappearance, about a sheriff found dead in the Colorado wilderness. The articles didn't connect the dots, but anyone looking would see the pattern. "Aldridge sees it too," Callahan continued. "He's doubled guards on Wardlow, hired private detectives to find you, put word out that there's a bounty on your head. $5,000, dead or alive." "I'm flattered." "You should be terrified. That kind of money brings serious hunters, ex-soldiers, gunslingers, men who'd kill their own mothers for half that sum." Callahan leaned forward. "You can't just walk up to Wardlow anymore. He's locked down tighter than a bank vault. Then I'll wait for him to unlock." "And if he doesn't? If he stays holed up until Aldridge's men find you?" Cole met Callahan's eyes. "Why are you here? You said you had information, so give it to me or get out." Callahan smiled, sad and tired. "Direct. I like that." He pulled out a folder, thick with papers. "I've been building a case against Aldridge for 10 years. Started when I was still with Pinkerton, investigating what looked like a simple fraud case. But the deeper I dug, the bigger it got. Land schemes, bribery, murder for hire. Aldridge has his fingers in everything: mines, railroads, water rights, timber claims, and anyone who gets in his way disappears. Like my family. Like dozens of families, maybe hundreds. Callahan opened the folder, showed Cole documents, photographs, maps. Your father wasn't the first honest man Aldridge had killed. He was just one in a long line. And after I started asking questions, started connecting dots. He pulled up his shirt, revealed a jagged scar across his ribs. They sent a message: burned my house, threatened my daughter. Pinkerton fired me, claimed I'd gone rogue, fabricated evidence. Had you? No. But the truth didn't matter. Aldridge owns half the judges in California, has senators on his payroll. Nobody would prosecute, nobody would investigate. So I've been working alone, gathering proof, waiting for the right moment. And you think this is it? I think you've already done more damage in 2 months than I managed in 10 years. You've exposed Beaumont, killed Crane and Dockery, put fear into men who thought they were untouchable. Callahan's voice dropped. But you're going to fail if you keep working alone. Wardlow's too protected, and Aldridge is a fortress. You need help. Cole turned away, looked out the narrow window at the city below. I work alone. Why? Pride? Or fear that anyone who gets close will end up dead? Both. Fair enough. Callahan stood, left the folder on the bed. But at least look at what I've gathered. Maybe it'll give you leverage. Maybe it'll get you killed faster. Either way, you'll go down knowing the full scope of what you're fighting. He moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the knob. There's a woman. Name's Elizabeth Wardlow, Thomas's wife. She doesn't know about Montana, doesn't know what her husband did to build their fortune. But she's not stupid, and she's not happy. I think she suspects something. What good does that do me? Maybe none. Maybe everything. Callahan opened the door. She takes tea every Thursday at the Palace Hotel, 3 o'clock. Alone, except for her lady's maid. If you wanted to have a conversation, that'd be the time. You want me to terrorize a woman who's done nothing wrong? I want you to give her the truth. What she does with it is her choice. Callahan tipped his hat. Good luck, Cole Maddox. You're going to need it. He left, and Cole was alone with the folder. He stood there for a long moment, then picked it up, started reading. The documents painted a picture of systematic evil, forged land claims, bribed officials, orchestrated violence. Aldridge had built an empire on fraud and murder, and Wardlow had been his right hand throughout. The Montana massacre was just one operation in a larger campaign of acquisition and intimidation. But one document stopped Cole cold. A letter dated 5 years ago, written in Wardlow's elegant script. M. The Maddox boy will be released from Yuma next year. Our contact in the prison system confirms he's been a model prisoner, no chance of extended sentence. I recommend we monitor his movements upon release. If he proves troublesome, we have options. If not, let him drift into obscurity. Either way, the Montana matter is long buried and unlikely to surface now. Focus should remain on the Nevada consolidation. TWW. They'd known. For years they'd known when he'd get out, had been watching, waiting to see if he'd seek revenge or simply fade away. And they'd prepared contingencies, which meant they knew he was coming now, knew what he wanted, and were ready. Cole closed the folder, mind racing. Direct confrontation wouldn't work. Wardlow was too protected, too prepared. But Callahan was right about one thing. There were other ways to destroy a man besides bullets. Thursday afternoon found Cole in the Palace Hotel's ornate lobby, dressed in borrowed respectability, pressed suit from a second-hand shop, clean shirt, polished shoes. He looked like a clerk or junior accountant, forgettable and harmless. Elizabeth Wardlow arrived precisely at 3, accompanied by a young maid carrying packages. She was younger than Cole expected, maybe 40, with the kind of beauty that came from good breeding and expensive maintenance. But her eyes were sharp, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone used to respect. Cole waited until she'd settled at her usual table, tea service delivered and the maid dismissed to wait by the entrance. Then he approached, hat in hand. Mrs. Wardlow? She looked up, polite but distant. Yes? My name is Cole Maddox. I need 5 minutes of your time to tell you something about your husband. Her expression cooled. If this is a business matter, you should speak to Thomas at his office. It's about the murders he committed in Montana Territory 15 years ago, the ones he thinks nobody knows about. Elizabeth's teacup stopped halfway to her lips. She set it down carefully, studying Cole with new intensity. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You suspect something. Maybe you've heard him talk in his sleep, or found letters he thought he'd destroyed. Maybe you've just noticed how he flinches when certain topics come up. Cole pulled out a photograph, set it on the table. This is my family. My mother Clara, my father Samuel, my sisters Emma and Grace. This was taken 6 months before your husband and 4 other men rode onto our ranch and killed them all. Elizabeth stared at the photograph, face draining of color. This is absurd. Thomas is a respected banker. Thomas Wardlow is a murderer who bought respectability with blood money. Cole sat uninvited, leaning close enough that only she could hear. He planned the massacre, identified the target, coordinated the attack. Then he walked away and let his accomplices take the fall while he built this perfect life. Why should I believe you? Because you already suspect it's true. Cole pulled out more documents. Callahan's evidence, the stolen papers from Beaumont, everything. Because deep down, you've wondered how a man with no family money, no connections, rose so fast. Because you've seen the way he changes the subject when anyone mentions his past. Because you married a stranger and you know it. Elizabeth's hands trembled as she looked through the papers. Her breathing quickened, and for a moment Cole thought she might call for help, have him thrown out. Instead, she whispered, "What do you want from me?" "The truth. Whatever you know about his business with Marcus Aldridge, about the land deals, the bribes, the network. Help me expose him, and you walk away clean. Protect him, and you go down with the ship when it sinks." She closed her eyes, and a single tear traced down her cheek. "I have children, 2 boys. If what you're saying is true, if Thomas is arrested, tried." She opened her eyes, meeting Cole's gaze. "They'll grow up with a murderer's name. They'll grow up knowing the truth. That's more than I got. And if I help you, what happens to Thomas?" Cole's jaw tightened. Justice. One way or another. Elizabeth sat in silence for a long moment, china clinking around them as other patrons enjoyed their afternoon tea, oblivious to the conversation unraveling a woman's life. Finally, she gathered the documents, tucked them into her handbag. "Thursday evenings, Thomas meets with men in our home. Business associates, he says. They use his study, lock the door, talk for hours. I'm not allowed in, but—" She paused. "But I've listened. The walls are thin if you know where to stand. What have you heard? Names. Marcus Aldridge most often. Talk of consolidation, acquisition, problems that need handling. Last week they discussed someone causing trouble, killing their people, exposing their operations. Thomas was frightened, more frightened than I've ever seen him." She met Cole's eyes. "That was you." "Yes." "Are you going to kill my husband?" Cole didn't lie. "Probably." "Good." The word came out hard, decisive. "Because if half of what's in these documents is true, he deserves worse than death. And I'll help you however I can." She stood, collected her things, gestured for her maid. But before leaving, she leaned close to Cole and whispered, "Tonight, 8 o'clock, Aldridge is coming to the house. They're meeting about you, about how to handle the threat. If you want to hear it all, there's a servant's entrance on the east side. The cook leaves it unlocked until 9 for late deliveries." Then she was gone, sweeping through the lobby like a duchess, giving no sign that her world had just shattered. Cole sat alone at the table, tea cooling untouched, and felt the weight of what he'd done. He'd just recruited a woman to betray her husband, used her children as leverage, manipulated her guilt and suspicion into cooperation. It was calculated, cruel, necessary. And it made him no better than the men he hunted. But the thought didn't stop him. Nothing would stop him now. That evening, Cole approached the Wardlow mansion from the east, moving through shadows cast by gaslights that lined the street. The servant's entrance was exactly where Elizabeth said, tucked beside the kitchen garden, unlocked as promised. Inside, he could hear kitchen sounds, pots clanging, voices discussing tomorrow's menu. He slipped past, found the servants' stairs, climbed toward the main floor. The house was massive, ornate, every surface polished and expensive. Blood money bought excellent taste. He found Elizabeth waiting on the second-floor landing, dressed for evening, pearls at her throat. She put a finger to her lips, led him to a small room, a library or study, lined with books nobody read. She pointed to the wall adjoining Wardlow's main study. "Here. You can hear everything." Cole pressed his ear to the wallpaper. Voices filtered through, muffled but audible. He recognized Wardlow's smooth baritone and another voice, deeper, commanding, used to being obeyed. Marcus Aldridge. "Can't keep ignoring this," Aldridge was saying. 4 of our key people dead or destroyed in 2 months. This isn't random. Someone's dismantling the network systematically. "I told you 15 years ago that leaving the boy alive was a mistake." Wardlow's voice carried barely suppressed anger. "Dutch was soft. Should have killed every witness. And I told you the heat would have been worse. A dead child brings federal marshals. A traumatized survivor gets sympathy and then forgotten." Aldridge paused, and Cole heard liquid pouring. Whiskey, probably. "But you were right. He's back and he's not stopping. The bounty hasn't worked. Nobody can find him. He moves like smoke, strikes without warning, disappears before anyone can respond. Beaumont never saw him coming. Crane died screaming his name. Dockery was ambushed on a trail he'd ridden 100 times. A chair creaked. This Cole Maddox is smarter than we anticipated. So what do you want to do? I'm locked in this house like a prisoner while he's out there planning my death." "I want you to think," Aldridge snapped. "The boy, the man now, what does he want? Just you and the others? Or something more?" "Revenge, obviously." "Revenge for what, specifically? The massacre? Or the reason behind it?" Silence. Then Wardlow, quiet. "You think he knows about the land, about the larger operation?" "I think Beaumont talked before his empire collapsed. I think Crane talked before he died. I think this isn't just about settling family debts anymore." Aldridge's voice hardened. "I think Cole Maddox wants to burn down everything we've built, and he's got evidence." "What kind of evidence?" "The kind Callahan's been gathering for 10 years. The kind that could put us both in prison if it reaches the right authorities. The kind that turns public opinion, that brings federal investigators, that makes governors and senators distance themselves from anyone associated with us." Cole heard movement, footsteps pacing. Wardlow spoke again, strained. "So we eliminate him. Put every resource into finding him, killing him. And if he's already distributed the evidence, if he's set up dead man switches, left instructions with Confederates?" Aldridge laughed, bitter. "You're thinking like a banker, Thomas. Thinking you can solve this with money and violence. But this requires finesse." "Meaning what?" "Meaning we give him what he wants. Partially." "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. We arrange a meeting, neutral ground, you, me, and Maddox. We negotiate." "Negotiate with a murderer?" "He's not the murderer, Thomas. We are." The words hung in the air, cold and final. "We offer him Wardlow. Publicly expose your role in Montana. Fabricate evidence that you acted alone, that you misled the others. You take the fall, do 10 years in prison, and in exchange Maddox gets his justice and leaves the rest of the network intact." "You're asking me to sacrifice myself to save your empire?" Wardlow's voice rose, cracking with fury. "After everything I've done, every risk I've taken, you'll be alive, imprisoned, yes, disgraced, certainly, but alive with a release date and a future. Better than what Beaumont got. Better than Crane or Dockery." A pause. "Or I can withdraw all protection, let Maddox come for you, and watch you die screaming, your choice." The silence stretched so long Cole thought they might have stopped talking. Then Wardlow, defeated. "And if he doesn't accept the offer? If he wants both of us dead? Then we'll have tried diplomacy, and we'll resort to methods that are less civilized." Aldridge's chair scraped. "I have resources you can't imagine, Thomas. People who specialize in making problems disappear permanently. If Maddox rejects a reasonable settlement, I'll unleash them." "When do we make this offer?" "Soon. I'll have intermediaries reach out, set up a meeting, somewhere public, witnesses present. We'll make it look legitimate." Footsteps approached the door. In the meantime, stay here, stay safe, and pray that Cole Maddox is smart enough to accept half a victory. The door opened, closed. Voices faded as they descended to the main floor. Cole remained frozen, ear pressed to the wall, mind racing. Aldridge wanted to negotiate, wanted to offer up Wardlow as a sacrifice, a peace offering to stop Cole's crusade. It was clever, pragmatic, exactly the kind of move a man who'd built an empire would make. And it might have worked, if Cole cared about living. Elizabeth appeared beside him, pale. "You heard?" "Every word." "What will you do?" Cole pulled back from the wall, looked at her directly. "I'm going to kill them both. And I'm going to burn their empire to ash. Even if it means dying yourself?" "Especially then." He moved toward the door. "Thank you for this. Take your children and leave San Francisco, tonight, if possible. Don't tell Thomas where you're going, just disappear." "Where will I go?" "Anywhere that's not here. Change your name, start over. You've got enough jewelry and cash to survive for months." He paused. "And you've got something more valuable. You're innocent. You didn't know what he was. Don't let his sins destroy your future." Elizabeth's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "The meeting, when Aldridge arranges it, how will I know?" "You won't need to. I'll know." Cole tipped his hat. "Get your children and run, Elizabeth. What's coming next isn't meant for witnesses." He slipped back down the servants' stairs, out the unlocked door, into fog that rolled through the streets like a living thing. Behind him, the Wardlow mansion glowed with gaslights and false respectability. Soon it would be dark. Soon it would be empty. Cole made his way back to the boarding house, retrieved Callahan's folder, and spent the night reading every document, memorizing names and connections. Aldridge's network was vast: judges, politicians, law enforcement, business leaders. Exposing it would take more than violence. It would take proof so overwhelming that even bought men couldn't ignore it. At dawn, Cole found a telegraph office, composed a message to Catherine Reeves in Sentinel Springs. He detailed everything: the documents, the conspiracy, Aldridge's name and crimes. He instructed her to send copies to every major newspaper west of the Mississippi, to federal marshals, to territorial governors. If anything happened to him, the evidence would still surface. Insurance, leverage, and maybe, just maybe, justice, even if he didn't survive to see it. 3 days later, a boy found Cole outside the boarding house, handed him an envelope, and ran before Cole could ask questions. Inside was a single sheet of expensive paper, written in elegant script. "Mr. Maddox, I believe we have matters to discuss. Tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock, at the warehouse district on the Embarcadero, Pier 17. Come alone, and I will do the same. We can end this like civilized men, or we can destroy each other. The choice is yours. Marcus Aldridge." Cole stared at the note, reading between the lines. Aldridge was offering negotiation, but the location, abandoned warehouse district, isolated pier, screamed trap. No witnesses meant no accountability. No backup meant easy disposal. Aldridge expected him to come armed and suspicious, expected a fight, which meant Cole would give him exactly the opposite. The next evening, Cole arrived at Pier 17 an hour early, wearing his oldest clothes and carrying no weapons. He'd left his gun at the boarding house, left the documents with Mrs. O'Brien sealed in an envelope marked for Catherine. He carried nothing but himself and 15 years of grief. The pier was exactly as expected: rotting wood, abandoned crates, the smell of salt and fish and decay. Fog rolled in thick, reducing visibility to a few yards, perfect for an ambush. Cole walked to the end of the pier and waited. 7 o'clock arrived with the sound of footsteps, multiple sets, approaching from the warehouse behind him. Cole didn't turn, didn't react, just stood looking out at the bay, at ships riding at anchor, at a city that had grown fat on dreams and corruption. Cole Maddox. Aldridge's voice was cultured, educated, the kind of voice that gave speeches at opera openings and charity galas. "You're either very brave or very stupid." Cole turned. Aldridge stood 20 feet away, flanked by 6 men with guns drawn. He was older than Cole expected, 60-something, with silver hair and the kind of face that looked trustworthy. The face of a man who'd never personally pulled a trigger, just signed orders for others to do it. "Where's Wardlow?" Cole asked. Safe, until we reach an agreement. Aldridge stepped closer, hands in his pockets, relaxed and confident. You've caused me considerable trouble, young man. Killed my people, exposed my operations, cost me millions in lost revenue. Do you understand the magnitude of what you've done? I understand I haven't finished yet, Aldridge smiled. Direct. I appreciate that. So let me be direct as well. I'm offering you a deal. Wardlow confesses to the Montana massacre, serves 10 years in prison. You get your justice, I get to preserve my network. Everyone walks away alive. Except Wardlow. He'll survive. Prison isn't pleasant, but it's survivable. Better than what you've given the others. Cole studied the 6 armed men, calculating odds. 0. He'd die before taking down more than 1, maybe 2. But that was fine. He hadn't come here to live. And what about you? He asked. You gave the orders? You're the disease. Wardlow's just a symptom. I'm untouchable. Aldridge said it matter-of-factly, without arrogance. I have senators on my payroll, judges in my pocket, enough money to buy my way out of anything short of murder witnessed by the president himself. You can kill me tonight. My men will certainly kill you in return, but it won't change anything. The network continues. My son takes over. The empire keeps growing. That's where you're wrong. Aldridge raised an eyebrow. Oh? 3 days ago, I sent copies of every document I've gathered to 15 different newspapers, 5 federal marshals, and 3 territorial governors. Evidence of fraud, murder, conspiracy, all tied directly to you. By now, those papers are being read by people you don't own, people who will be asking questions you can't answer with money. For the first time, Aldridge's confidence cracked. You're bluffing. Try me. Cole stepped forward, and 3 guns cocked in response. You wanted to negotiate? Here's my offer. You confess to everything. Montana, the land frauds, the bribes, all of it. You surrender to federal authorities and face trial. In exchange, I don't kill you tonight. Aldridge laughed, recovering his composure. You have no weapon. You're surrounded by armed men. You're in no position to make threats. I don't need a weapon. Your empire's already burning. I just need to make sure you burn with it. Cole's voice dropped, cold and absolute. You took everything from me, my family, my childhood, 15 years of my life locked in a cage. You built palaces on their graves. Now those palaces are collapsing and you're going to die knowing that everything you created turned to ash. Kill him, Aldridge said quietly. The 6 men raised their weapons. Cole stood perfectly still, staring at Aldridge, watching the exact moment the railroad baron realized his mistake. Because standing behind Aldridge, emerging from the fog with guns drawn, were 20 men wearing federal marshal badges, and at their head was Callahan, holding a warrant and a smile sharp as broken glass. Marcus Aldridge, Callahan called out. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, bribery, and about 40 other charges. Tell your men to drop their weapons, or we'll add resisting arrest to the list. Aldridge spun, saw the marshals, saw his empire crumbling in real time. His men looked at each other, calculating odds that had suddenly shifted impossibly against them. One by one, they lowered their guns. You bastard, Aldridge hissed at Cole. You set me up. No. Cole's smile was colder than the bay wind. You set yourself up 15 years ago. I just made sure you'd pay for it. The marshals moved in, cuffing Aldridge and his men. Callahan approached Cole, lowered his voice. The documents you sent started arriving yesterday. Federal prosecutor took one look and authorized warrants for everyone named. Aldridge, Wardlow, 24 others. Biggest corruption case in California history. Wardlow? Already in custody. Arrested this afternoon at his bank, hauled out in chains while his colleagues watched. Callahan's expression turned grim. His wife and children left the city 3 days ago. Nobody knows where. Cole felt something loosen in his chest just slightly. Elizabeth had listened, had saved herself and her children from what was coming. What about the others? The network? Crumbling. Aldridge was the keystone. Without him, his bought politicians are scrambling to distance themselves. His corrupt judges are suddenly developing ethics. His business partners are claiming they never knew. Callahan gestured to the marshals leading Aldridge away. You did it, Cole. You actually did it. We did it. Your evidence made the case. Your bodies on the ground got people's attention. Callahan extended his hand. Thank you for finishing what I couldn't. Cole shook his hand, then walked to where Aldridge stood in handcuffs, waiting to be loaded into a wagon. The railroad baron met his eyes with pure hatred. You think this ends anything? Aldridge hissed. I'll be out in a year. My lawyers will tie the courts in knots. I'll buy my way free and come for everyone you've ever spoken to, everyone who helped you. You're done, Cole interrupted. You're finished. And you're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell remembering the names of everyone you killed to get rich. Starting with these, he leaned close, whispered 7 names. His mother, his father, his sisters, the ranch hands. Aldridge's face twisted with rage, and he lunged against his restraints. They were nothing. Obstacles. You want to know the truth? I've killed hundreds, maybe thousands, and I'd do it again for half the profit. A marshal struck him across the face. That's enough. They dragged Aldridge away, still cursing, still threatening. Cole watched him go, feeling nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just emptiness where rage had burned for 15 years. Callahan touched his shoulder. Come on, federal prosecutor wants your testimony, needs you to walk through everything. Could take weeks, maybe months. And after? After you're free. No charges for Crane or Dockery. They were corrupt officials. You acted in self-defense as far as anyone can prove. Beaumont's a civil matter, not criminal. You'll testify, help put these bastards away, then... Callahan shrugged. Then you get to figure out who Cole Maddox is when he's not hunting Ghost. Cole looked out at the bay, at fog swallowing ships and city alike. Who was he? Without revenge. Without the list. Without the names. Without the driving purpose that had sustained him through Yuma and beyond? He didn't know. But for the first time in 15 years, he had the chance to find out. The federal courthouse in San Francisco smelled of old wood and older lies. Cole sat in the witness chair for the 3rd consecutive day, answering questions from prosecutors who treated him like a hero and defense attorneys who called him a vigilante killer. The gallery was packed, reporters scribbling notes, curious citizens watching justice grind forward, and in the back row, Catherine Reeves, who'd traveled from Arizona to see the end of what they'd started. Thomas Wardlow sat at the defense table looking 20 years older than he had a month ago, expensive suit hanging loose on a frame that had lost weight from stress and fear. His attorneys shuffled papers and objected to everything, fighting a battle already lost. The evidence was overwhelming. Documents, testimonies, forensic accountants tracing blood money through 2 decades of transactions. Marcus Aldridge occupied a separate table with separate attorneys, maintaining the fiction that he and Wardlow weren't co-conspirators. But everyone in the courtroom knew the truth. The empire had fallen, and these were just the final convulsions. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Margaret Chen, approached Cole with another document. Mr. Maddox, can you identify this letter? Cole studied it, recognized Wardlow's handwriting. It's dated September 20th, 1871, 6 days after the massacre. Wardlow is reporting to Aldridge about securing the Montana property. And this line here, the obstacle has been permanently removed. What does that refer to? My family. Cole's voice stayed level, though his hands clenched in his lap. My father who wouldn't sell, my mother and sisters who were witnesses. The ranch hands who worked the land. All of them, reduced to an obstacle in a business transaction. Wardlow's lead attorney shot to his feet. Objection! The witness is speculating about my client's intent. Overruled. Judge Harrison, a stern woman in her 60s, looked at the attorney with barely concealed contempt. The document speaks for itself, counselor. Sit down. Chen continued, walking Cole through the paper trail that connected Wardlow to Aldridge, Aldridge to the other conspirators, all of them to a web of fraud and murder that spanned 3 territories. Hours passed. The afternoon sun slanted through tall windows, painting everything in amber and shadow. Finally, Chen returned to her table. No further questions, Your Honor. Wardlow's attorney stood for cross-examination, a thin man with nervous energy and desperate eyes. Mr. Maddox, isn't it true that you killed 3 men in the course of your investigation? Yes. And you did so without legal authority, without warrants, without due process? I did. So by your own admission, you're a murderer, just like the men you claim my client associated with. Cole met the attorney's eyes, unflinching. The men I killed were given chances to surrender, to face justice in courts like this one. They chose violence, and I responded in kind. Your client ordered the execution of innocent people, including children, for profit. We're not the same. But you appointed yourself judge, jury, and executioner. I appointed myself nothing. I survived a massacre, gathered evidence, and when legal channels failed because your client and his associates had corrupted them, I did what was necessary to stop more families from dying. Cole leaned forward. How many ranchers lost their land to Aldridge's schemes? How many small-town sheriffs were bribed or threatened into silence? How many witnesses disappeared before they could testify? Your client built his fortune on a mountain of bodies. I just made sure the mountain finally collapsed on him. The attorney opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. No further questions. Judge Harrison called a recess, and Cole stepped down from the witness stand, legs stiff from sitting. Callahan met him in the hallway, handed him a cup of water. You did good in there. Just told the truth. Truth's more powerful than most people think. Callahan gestured to a quieter corner. Prosecutor thinks they'll have a verdict within a week. Both defendants are going down. Wardlow for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and about a dozen other charges. Aldridge for the same, plus racketeering and corruption. They're looking at 20 years minimum, possibly life. And the others? The network? 38 arrests so far. Judges, politicians, business owners, all scrambling to cut deals and testify against each other. It's a feeding frenzy. Callahan smiled grimly. Aldridge's empire is burning exactly like you promised. Cole sipped the water, tasting nothing. What about Dutch Keller? I never confirmed if he's really dead. He is. I checked. Died in Silver City 2 years ago, just like they said. Shot by a drifter who disappeared before anyone could get a name or description. Callahan paused. Though between you and me, I think that drifter might have been someone with a grudge, someone tracking the gang members just like you were. Someone else from that night? Or from one of the other massacres? Aldridge and his people left a lot of survivors over the years. Not everyone stayed silent. Callahan clapped Cole on the shoulder. Point is, Dutch got his reckoning. They all did. Your list is complete. Cole pulled out the worn paper from his vest pocket, unfolded it slowly. 5 names, all crossed through now. He stared at it for a long moment. This artifact that had guided him for 15 years, that had been his purpose and his prison. Then he walked to a nearby window, opened it, and let the paper go. Wind caught it, carried it out over the city, tumbling through the air until it disappeared from sight. What now? Callahan asked quietly. Now I figure out what comes next. The trial concluded 6 days later with guilty verdicts on all major charges. Wardlow received 25 years in San Quentin. Aldridge got 30, though both men's attorneys immediately filed appeals. The courtroom erupted when the verdicts were read. Some cheering, some cursing, reporters rushing for the exits to file their stories. Cole sat in the gallery, watching the 2 men who'd orchestrated his family's death being led away in chains. He waited for satisfaction, for closure, for some sense that justice had been served. Instead, he felt only tired. Catherine found him outside the courthouse an hour later, standing in the fog that rolled through the streets like it was trying to erase the city entirely. She didn't say anything, just stood beside him, 2 survivors sharing silence. Finally, she spoke. My daughter's grave is in Silver City. I haven't visited in 5 years, couldn't bear to see it, to remember. She pulled her coat tighter. But I think I will now. I think I can finally say goodbye. Because it's over? Because I'm not angry anymore. Or at least not angry enough to let it consume me. She looked at him, eyes gentle. You should try it sometime. I don't know how. Neither did I. But we learn. We survive, and we learn. She pressed something into his hand, a folded piece of paper. It's an address. Montana Territory, Ruby Mountains. The ranch where you grew up, or what's left of it. Cole stared at the address. Why would I want to go back there? Because you can't move forward until you've made peace with where you've been. The dead don't need your rage anymore, Cole. They need you to live the life they didn't get to finish. She started to walk away, paused, and because there's someone there who's been waiting a long time to meet you. Who? But Catherine had already disappeared into the fog, leaving only questions behind. Cole spent 2 weeks settling affairs in San Francisco. He gave testimony to federal investigators, signed affidavits, helped prosecutors build cases against the remaining network members. The story dominated newspapers across the West. The orphaned boy who'd brought down an empire, the revenge plot 15 years in the making, the corruption exposed. Some called him a hero. Others called him a murderer who'd gotten lucky. Cole didn't care about either assessment. He collected his sparse belongings, said goodbye to Mrs. to O'Brien, who insisted on packing him food for the journey, and bought a train ticket heading east. The Montana Territory appeared outside the train window like a half-remembered dream, mountains rising in purple majesty, valleys where grass grew tall and wild, sky so big it made everything human seem temporary and small. Cole had forgotten how beautiful it was, how the light here felt different from anywhere else. He rented a horse in Helena and rode into the Ruby Mountains following roads that were newer but followed the same paths he'd traveled as a boy. Everything was familiar and foreign at once. This ridge where his father had taught him to track deer, that creek where his sisters had played on summer afternoons. The ranch appeared suddenly around a bend in a narrow valley, or rather what remained of it. The house was gone, burned foundation stones overgrown with grass and wildflowers. The barn had collapsed, timbers rotting into soil. But someone had cleared the debris, planted trees, built a small fence around what Cole realized with a jolt were graves. 7 of them, marked with simple wooden crosses. A woman stood beside the graves, older than Cole, maybe 50, wearing trail clothes and a hat against the autumn sun. She turned when she heard his horse, and Cole saw eyes the same dark brown as Diego Morales, the ranch hand who'd died defending the family. "You're Cole Maddox," she said. Not a question. "Yes." "Who are you?" "Maria Morales. Diego was my brother." She gestured to the graves. "After the massacre, nobody wanted this land. Too much blood, too many ghosts. So I bought it. Spent 15 years maintaining the graves, keeping the memory alive. Waiting. For what? For you, or someone like you. Someone who'd make them pay." She studied him with knowing eyes. "I heard what happened in San Francisco. Read the newspapers. You did what I couldn't. What the law wouldn't." Cole dismounted, walked to the graves slowly. Someone had carved names into the crosses. His mother, his father, his sisters, Diego, the other ranch hands. Simple, but permanent. "I come up here every Sunday," Maria said. "Bring flowers, pull weeds, talk to them, tell them about my life, about the world changing, about waiting for justice." She smiled sadly. "Now I can tell them it finally came." Cole knelt beside his mother's grave, touched the weathered wood. "I killed 3 men, got 2 more sent to prison, destroyed an empire." His voice cracked. "But they're still dead. Justice doesn't bring them back." "No, it doesn't, but it stops the men who killed them from doing it to other families, and that matters." Maria knelt beside him. "Your mother used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they take from the world, but what they give. Diego told me that in his last letter, 2 weeks before he died. Clara Maddox believed in leaving things better than you found them. I've left a trail of bodies across 3 territories. You've left a trail of exposed corruption, arrested criminals, and families who can finally rest knowing their loved ones' killers faced consequences. That's not nothing, Cole." They sat in silence as wind moved through the valley, rustling the tall grass that had reclaimed cultivated fields. Somewhere nearby, a hawk cried, the world continuing, indifferent to human grief and human justice alike. "What will you do now?" Maria asked. "I don't know. I've spent 15 years focused on one thing. Now that it's done..." Cole spread his hands helplessly. "I'm 27 years old, and I don't know who I am except a man who hunts ghosts." "Then it's time to learn. To become someone your family would be proud of." Maria stood, brushed dirt from her knees. I run a ranch about 10 miles north, small operation, cattle, horses, some crops. I could use help if you're interested. Pays not much, but it's honest work. I'm not sure I remember how to do honest work. You were 12 when this happened. You knew how to work a ranch then. The skills come back. She started toward her horse, paused. And maybe being here, rebuilding what was destroyed, that's the real justice. Not revenge, not punishment, but creation. Making something good grow where evil tried to leave only ashes. Cole looked at the graves, at the foundation stones, at the valley his father had chosen because it was beautiful and promising and worth building a life around. 15 years ago, men had tried to erase the Maddox family from existence. They'd failed. The graves remained. The land remembered. And Cole still lived, still breathed, still had the chance to honor his family by living well instead of dying angry. "I'll think about your offer," he said. "Good. You know where to find me when you're ready." Maria mounted her horse, looked back at him one last time. "They'd be proud of you, Cole. What you did took courage and strength and a kind of determination most men don't have. But the hardest part comes next, learning to live with what you've done and who you've become. Don't waste the life they died too young to finish." She rode away, leaving Cole alone with 7 graves and 15 years of memories. He spent the night there building a small fire near the foundation stones, wrapped in a blanket against the cold. Stars emerged in impossible numbers, the same stars he'd looked at as a boy, the same stars that had witnessed everything. Cole thought about his sisters, about the childhood they'd been denied, thought about his parents, about the future they'd planned, thought about Diego and the other ranch hands who'd died defending people they cared about. And for the first time since the night of the massacre, Cole cried. Not from rage or frustration, but from grief pure and simple. He cried for everyone he'd lost, for the boy he'd been, for the man he'd become. Cried until he was empty, until the tears finally stopped and all that remained was acceptance. The dead were dead. No amount of revenge would change that, but he was alive and he had a choice: carry the weight of the past forever, or set it down and walk forward into whatever came next. At dawn, Cole stood before the graves one last time. He'd brought flowers from the valley, wild asters and Indian paintbrush, and he placed them carefully at each cross. "I did what I set out to do," he said quietly. "Dutch, Beaumont, Crane, Dockery, Wardlow, Aldridge, all of them paid. The empire they built is ashes. Everyone who helped them is facing justice." He paused, searching for words. "I don't know if that's enough. If anything could be enough. But it's what I had to give." The wind answered, moving through grass and trees, carrying his words away. "I'm going to try something now. Going to try living instead of just surviving. I think that's what you'd want. For me to have the life you didn't get to finish." His voice steadied. "So I'm going to work honest, build something good, maybe help people who need it. I'm going to try to be someone you'd recognize, someone you'd be proud of." He stood there until the sun cleared the mountains, painting the valley in gold and amber. Then he mounted his horse and rode north toward Maria's ranch, toward a future he couldn't yet imagine but was finally ready to face. 6 months later, Cole stood in a courtroom in Helena, watching as the final appeals from Aldridge and Wardlow were denied. Both men would serve their full sentences, possibly more as additional charges were filed. The network they'd built had completely collapsed. 38 convictions, millions in seized assets, systemic reforms in land claims, and mineral rights across 3 territories. Catherine sat beside him, having traveled north to witness the end. "It's finally over," she said. "Yeah." Cole felt lighter than he had in years. "It is. What will you do now? Maria tells me you're learning ranch work again." Learning and remembering. Turns out the skills don't really leave, just get buried. He smiled, and it felt almost natural. "I'm thinking about buying land near hers. Small place, room to build a house, run some cattle. Nothing ambitious, just a life." "That sounds perfect." Catherine squeezed his hand. "Your family would be proud." They walked out of the courthouse into spring sunshine, the world green and alive and full of possibility. Cole breathed deep, tasting freedom, not just from Yuma, not just from the list, but from the rage that had driven him for so long. He thought about his sisters, about how Emma had loved horses and Grace had collected wildflowers, about his mother's laugh and his father's patient teaching, about Diego's loyalty and the other ranch hands' courage. They died, but their memory lived in him, in the way he worked, in the values he carried forward. That evening, Cole returned to the Maddox ranch, his ranch now, the deed signed and recorded. He'd started rebuilding, clearing the old foundation, planning a new house. Not a replica of what had been, but something new, something that honored the past while facing the future. As he worked, hammering boards into place, he heard a horse approaching. Maria rode up with supplies, dismounted with the ease of someone who'd spent a lifetime in the saddle. "Brought you nails and coffee," she said, unloading packages. "And news. Federal prosecutor sent a letter. They're using the Aldridge case as a precedent, investigating land fraud across the West. Estimate they'll recover stolen property for maybe 200 families." Cole absorbed this, feeling something warm spread through his chest. 200 families getting justice. Because you started the ball rolling. Because you didn't give up. Maria handed him the coffee. "That's the real legacy, Cole. Not the men you killed, but the people you saved." They sat on the half-built porch, drinking coffee and watching the sun set behind the mountains. Cole felt at peace in a way he hadn't since childhood, like the land itself was welcoming him home. "Diego would have liked you," Maria said quietly. "He used to talk about teaching you to track, about how quick you learned, said you had your father's patience and your mother's determination. I wish I remembered him better, all of them. Sometimes the memories feel so far away. Then make new ones, good ones. Let this land hold joy again instead of just grief." She stood, brushed off her pants. "I'll come by tomorrow, help with the framing. Meanwhile, you should rest. You've been working from dawn to dusk for weeks." After she left, Cole walked to the graves. He'd planted wildflowers around them, built a proper fence, carved new markers from oak that would last decades. It was beautiful in the fading light, peaceful and permanent. "I'm home," he said simply. "Finally home. And I'm going to make you proud. Going to live well, love fully, build something worth building. The men who tried to destroy us are locked away, and the world's a little better because of what we all sacrificed." He paused, listening to evening birds beginning their songs. "Thank you for giving me this, for giving me life, for teaching me right from wrong, for loving me enough that I knew what I was fighting for. I won't waste it." The wind stirred the flowers, and in it Cole heard something like approval, like blessing, like permission to finally let go and live. He returned to his work as stars emerged, hammering by lantern light, building a home on land that had known too much sorrow and was finally ready for joy. Around him the valley settled into night, crickets singing, owls hunting, the creek running its eternal course. And in the darkness, Cole Maddox smiled. Not from revenge or satisfaction, but from simple contentment. The boy who'd hidden in a cellar had become a man who built houses. The prisoner who'd counted days had become a free man who counted blessings. The ghosts he'd hunted were laid to rest. The list was complete. The scales balanced as much as they ever would. Now there was only tomorrow, and the day after, and all the days stretching forward into a future he'd helped create. A future his family would never see, but one that honored their memory by being lived fully and freely and well. Cole set down his hammer as the moon rose, full and bright, painting the valley silver. He looked at the graves, at the half-built house, at the mountains standing eternal guard. "This is for you," he whispered. "All of it, everything I build from here. This is how I say goodbye and thank you, and I love you, by living, by being happy, by making this place whole again." The wind carried his words into the night, into the mountains, into the vast Montana sky. And somewhere in that vastness, Cole felt certain his family heard and approved. He picked up the hammer again, drove another nail home, and continued building toward dawn. The end had come. The beginning stretched before him. And Cole Maddox, survivor and avenger, and finally just a man, stepped forward into it with steady hands and a healing heart, ready at last to live the life he'd fought 15 years to reclaim.